All right, we'll go ahead and call this meeting to order then. Start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Angie Schreiber. Here.
Catherine Solon.
Here.
Andy Mary.
Here.
Jake Leiterman.
Here.
And Dr. Julie Sprague.
Here.
I'm just noting that Danny and myself are here for the minutes.
Here.
Mm-hmm.
All right, do we have any public comment?
It doesn't look too good. Oh.
Carol, you're the only one, I guess.
I'm just public.
Okay.
All right, moving on to new business. Letter A, Facilities Task Force update. I don't know, Jake, do you want to speak to that maybe a little bit?
I guess just making sure that we understand, what we're gonna need. My mind's always racing ahead and trying to be proactive and understand the process and whatnot. I think obviously the intent is to have the next meeting and then have the committee formed out of people who either attend those and say they want to, or just let us know.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything else we should be
Well,
doing? I know that the capacity study is going to be one thing that we're going to want sooner than later. I guess, what are your thoughts on how we roll that out? I would want to.
what do you mean exactly with the capacity study?
Well, just kind of have the first, we talked about the elementaries, right?
Yeah.
Clint has done a lot more work on the high school and the middle school. Those are kind of, there's a lot of layers to that that I think is better discussed and explained versus just saying, this is the capacity or this is the square footage we need as a hard number. I'd like to add some context to that and have some discussion on it so that we understand what that really means.
Mm-hmm.
They're such big buildings that when you start looking at how you can fit kids, when you look at the tech ed area, we have a pretty good sized tech ed area here. Versus just classroom sizes. There's some context that goes along with what he prepared. So I think that would be good for the board to discuss. I don't know if that's a committee thing first and then the whole board. I'm sure that the whole board's going to want to know all that stuff. So is that something we kind of do as a
Well, we can invite them to the
workshop
committee.
thing, or do we do it at the next committee?
Was that part of Lori's questions and ask about the capacity for this process?
When she created that roadmap that we went
Yeah,
over,
yeah.
I'm trying to think if it was in there. I know she envisions the board looking at that first, and then ultimately whoever is on the task force having that be at one of its first meetings,
Yes.
rather on the early end rather than wait.
And I think Lori wants to be part of when we discuss it as a board. I think she'll want to be part of that. I'll want to have Clint here or at least on Zoom to explain some questions that are going to come up, and just so that the board really understands what that means and.
And Jake and I did tell her about your wishes not to go so far down the road with a contractor that, the expectation is there, and she understands that completely.
Right.
And so does Clint from
Yes.
Bray,
Yeah.
so that won't be an issue.
So Jake, what are your ideas about the building capacity study that would involve the board, or will it just be the task force, and then all that information is given to the board? Does that make sense? I know you're thinking.
We can do it with the task force too. I just didn't know if you guys kind of wanted a preview before it got discussed in the task force.
When is he going to have that done?
He has it mostly done now. He wants to kind of talk through it and explain it, and we can refine it if there's a certain way that you want it, kind of, I don't want to downplay it, but consolidated. Is there some high points of that you want to present, or do you, it's a pretty big document, so to walk through how he has everything broken down with the full task force might be a little clumsy.
Okay.
But
So next month with the task force meeting that we have set with Lori, that's another general, everybody come. So we could talk about this on the committee, building committee, next month.
We
That,
could- Yeah,
building capacity study.
and I would just put an invite out to the full
To
board,
anybody. Yep.
Okay.
so that they know that we're gonna be talking about that. Is that gonna be covering the, like you said, the different layers, but like also, I had tasked Lori with doing our future enrollment. I know Tim had done that in the past, but that was a while back, and I just wanna,
We have it,
compare.
it's in the budget book, but we'll bring that up.
is that
again.
current?
Mhm.
Okay.
It's updated every year.
Okay. And so how far out does that project?
Is it 10 years? You remember, Andy?
This is the enrollment projection.
Yeah.
Yes. Don't they go up to 10 years?
But don't they do that for us specifically when we ask them, and then they don't do it every year?
We take birth rate numbers, Mary Kay's the one
Right.
who updates it, but I think the community or the county does one too, and that's not done every year, I don't
But
think.
I thought we get this from the state, can't remember what department does this, population projection.
Oh, I don't know.
That might, well, it could be the workforce, it could be
No, it's.
children and family services, it could be, I know it's a big part of workforce
I
development.
think we've had one done lately, so.
Well, we can have that
Okay.
at the next
Okay.
meeting too with,
Would it be tied to the census?
Well, it used to be based on that birth rate report that came
No,
right from the hospital.
I'm not sure how they calculate it. It's the,
I vaguely
it's
remember
something
what
through the
you're talking
university.
about. Yes.
It's, yeah, it's something through the university. I just can't remember the name of it. You
Okay.
could call Tim, he would remember the name of it.
I think it'd also be important to know how many staff members per building, and then a breakdown of like administration, teachers, teaching support, stuff like that in each building. I think that would be good to know.
Julie, do we have an idea of any enrollment to Mattoon at this point?
last time we checked was a week or, no, it's more than 2 weeks now, and nothing was firm. They haven't submitted any.
Okay.
And we even checked with the state to make sure we weren't.
When do
missing.
they have to submit those? Is there a cutoff date?
Did they get their voucher? They must have got their voucher then.
I don't know if they're voucher or not. I haven't heard any advertising, like Peace
Okay.
Lutheran advertises that they're.
Okay.
They
because I know
would not be a
DPI
voucher
I've heard
school yet.
advertising.
They have to be
I thought they have to be established, don't
Go
they?
1
through
year,
the-
and then
Okay.
they can apply to.
Yeah.
Process.
Yeah.
with
I've
the state.
definitely heard advertising though,
Because I thought they got
on the radio.
denied with.
About them being a voucher school or just
Just
opening?
enrollment.
Yeah, I've heard the enrollment
Okay.
piece,
Okay.
but, yeah, you have to go
Yeah.
1 year.
And then the other thing that would be nice to know, which I don't think we can know until the budget's completed, is what the legislature and the governor are doing with voucher schools. Because right now, there's a cap on enrollment for voucher schools, but there was talk of removing that cap or increasing that cap. And then I don't know what Peace Lutheran would do with that. I mean, certainly Mattoon might take some kids, but if the cap went off, I just have no idea what Peace Lutheran would do. Would they
Right.
increase? Would they?
That,
And we
yeah,
don't know what their room is either.
I think it would be good to know like
What their capacity is right now?
Capacity is, yeah.
I think they're
I think they're
Full.
full, yeah.
Did we?
essentially. That doesn't
I do
mean
too.
they couldn't.
I know that was
Everyone
one of the
says sign up.
questions that Carol actually gave to me that I passed along to Lori last week when we met. Because she gave me a couple other questions that you probably got that from Lori, that we need just some information before the task force gets started. and
Okay.
committed.
So we'll bring that to the July meeting and arrange to have Clint either here or,
Are you okay with Clint on Zoom?
Oh, yeah.
I think he is for that. I mean,
Yeah, oh yeah,
if it was something more.
that's, yeah, I'm used to dealing with that all the time.
okay.
Driving 3 hours one way, so.
I mean,
Yeah.
if there's something good from what we've all experienced is, I think we've all gotten better with Zoom meetings.
Mhm. Do you know, are we still participating in the, was it the AGR grant? So do we have to keep a student to teacher ratio?
That's one of the options. We haven't been able to with only 3 elementaries, so.
Okay, so we're not,
Right, that's one way
Completely
you
tied to that,
can
okay.
qualify for the funding, right? But
okay,
we go through coaching and targeted support.
okay, gotcha, okay. Right,
And just in the past, we've kind of avoided committee meetings in July, but I'm hearing that that's not happening this year. Is that correct?
great, yeah, there's too much to do. There's too much to cover. So I also wanted to mention that, since there was only, maybe 6, 7 people here for this last public listening session, that I think we should really get the word out more. Would it be okay with you if I created some videos? I could send them to Lori to use on our local Facebook pages, our districts, and like annual information, stuff like that. So,
Yeah, I wondered about that too, and then afterwards, she indicated the first one is, in her experience, less attended. So
Okay.
we're hoping for more in July, but.
I'm
yeah,
surprised there's only 7.
We
I
do
was
have actually 5 other people that want to be a part of the task force that could not be here that Thursday night. A couple of them was because of the races that were going on, like Travis Krieger. He wants to be a part of it, but he was over there. And then somebody was sick that day. So I think there will be more as we go
Okay.
along.
Okay.
Are they required to attend that meeting if they want to be a voting member of the task force?
No.
Yeah, because I talked to somebody else and I said, oh, we missed you at the meeting. And he said, but you got another chance. And I said, well, I'm going to miss that one too.
Oh, no.
But they still want to be
Okay.
part of it.
Well, as long as they're committed to coming to the task force meetings,
Yeah, yeah.
that's gonna be the
I've
biggest thing.
talked to a few people about it that have made the comment to me that, you know, they're willing to be involved with it, but they don't want to come to a million meetings either, you know.
Right,
They want to be part of it, but they want to.
So like
Get to
the
work.
engagement meetings we just had and.
Right, yeah, they understand, I mean, they're longstanding members of the community that understand quite a bit that they don't feel like
Right.
they need to come
And
and sit to
Deacon
the.
Washako said to me that I mentioned him if he had other business leaders or even from the hospital. So he said he would ask around too if there were
Okay.
others. The person that you talk to, does Mary Kay have their information? Good. So that way she can communicate with them.
okay. Anything else on the task force? No? Okay. All right, moving on to item B, lawnmower replacement.
Buy a goat.
What's that?
Buy a goat.
Do they eat snow?
They're playing that.
So, what this unit is, it's a front mount mower that also has a blower, snow blower, and a broom that we use for sweeping snow. So we basically use this machine year round. We have 2 of them. It's a pretty pivotal point of our operation as far as when you look at lawn mowing or snow removal. We contract out the bigger stuff, but to have, you know, the ability to do the sidewalks, doorways, and things like that, these pieces of equipment they get used pretty steady. The 2 units we do have, and the one that I'm going to recommend that we purchase, is all the attachments do interchange, which is very nice in case we have a mechanical issue or whatever. We have a backup, you know, in the morning, especially when we talk about snow removal, having, typically how the guys set it up is they'll put a snow blower on one and the broom on the other. But in the case that one does fail, at least we have one to keep moving. The 2 that we have right now, the one that we're gonna replace is a 2007 model. So, I think that one's close to 4,000 hours on it. Overall, it's been a pretty good machine. it's getting to the point where it's broke down on us a couple times, nothing major, but, it's kinda getting to that age, 4,000 hours on a lawnmower is a lot. We do have a trade-in value of $6,000 that the, low, or the recommended vendor did tell us. I think we can get more for it on our auction website, so we would post that with that $6,000 reserve. If we can get more for it, we'll settle on that. If not, we would trade it in, and that would, these prices are not reflective of that value. So if we do end up trading it in, it would be subtracted from these totals.
How, and this is for just one?
Yes.
How wide is it?
So that is one of the differences between the top two, our John Deere units, and those are 60-inch snow blower, 60-inch broom, 72-inch mower deck. On the one from Rue Motors is a Kubota, and they only provide 50-inch broom and snow blower, which isn't ideal for us because we have 5-foot wide sidewalks, we have big concrete areas, but that
An
they
inch
don't
makes a difference.
provide it. Yeah.
So is this like a small tractor? Is this with the attachments? Is this a Bobcat with the
No,
attachments?
I can pull up a picture.
To me, these numbers look really, really high for what
Yeah.
we're looking for. And did you talk with Quinlan's at all?
We did.
Fullers.
Okay, we're Fullers, yeah.
Fuller's doesn't have a type, the front mount type that we're
Okay.
wanting. When it comes to the design of the mower, these are very, very good at getting into small spaces and turning well both for snow removal and lawn. Obviously, a zero turn is gonna be tighter for lawnmower, but you can't really use a zero turn for how we use it for snow removal. I know there's some zero turns that
Yeah.
do have some attachments on, but they're not nearly as heavy as we need for what we do.
Okay.
They'd be awfully cold too.
Yeah, yeah. So this is the, oh, geez, what did I do? So this is similar to the units we have in what I want to purchase.
Jake, how many horsepower is that?
35,
And that's a diesel 3-cylinder?
correct.
Which one is that replacing again? Is it the one similar to what that looks like?
We have two just like this.
Okay.
Because we run them in tandem, and I mean, we do need to have two,
Are
especially
both of
when we
those
get
here
this-
at the high school, or
They're
they're used
housed here.
throughout the district?
They're housed here, but they're used throughout the district.
Okay. Do we have a reason that we are taking care of the snow removal on the sidewalk all the way down 10th Avenue? The reason I ask, I mean, that's wear and tear on our machine.
Absolutely.
Yeah, shouldn't that be, that should,
City.
well,
City.
it's supposed to be, no,
Home-
done
home-
homeowners.
Yeah.
And Andy, I don't know if you were
Right.
on the board when that went in, but what I've been told from Tim is that when they looked at putting that sidewalk, because it wasn't always there, when they looked at putting the sidewalk in, the community, or particularly the residents along there, were very against it. And somehow there was an agreement made that since it benefited the safety of our kids, and we were driving to the middle school anyways, or the other buildings, we would plow it instead of just driving down the road
But
next
how
to
often
it.
do we drive to the middle school? Because the middle school has its own equipment.
We drive to all three elementaries with these.
Okay.
So we're going down, typically, they'll either go
Yeah, 'cause I
down
see the
Alva
Bobcat.
west and north and.
Yeah. I
You
see
drive the
Bobcat.
unit
and then go
itself?
back. Yes.
Oh,
Would it be more advantageous to put that on a trailer and pull it behind a truck?
No,
No?
no, these things move pretty good.
Okay.
By the time you load up, unload, and then you got a truck and a trailer, and the trailer's getting drugged throughout everything too. I mean, these we can get into our, inside and wash them pretty easy, you know, to take a trailer. You know, Jeff does a pretty good job at making sure that they get cleaned with traveling on the road with the salt.
So if there's an agreement, we have it somewhere.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, was it
I've
verbal or-
never- I have never seen a paper agreement.
Well,
That's
'cause
what
it-
I've been
in
told.
reality though, do you want, if it snows 6 inches, when do they get out there and plow that, 5 or 6 in the morning, right?
Yeah, my guys are usually done by 6:30, 7 o'clock at the
Yeah,
latest.
and so if kids are walking to school, homeowners aren't gonna shovel the sidewalk.
They
They got
don't.
24 hours to do it, they're gonna drag their feet as much as they
Yeah.
can.
Well, I don't know, I live right next to North Elementary, and our block was always really good about doing it, because we didn't have anybody do it, you
Not the
know,
house on the corner,
not the house on the corner.
corner of Arctic and,
Our block is not the middle school.
Eric and Graham,
I do our
yeah.
block.
the brown house, wasn't? Yeah.
And
There was one that was unoccupied for a
Better
while.
hope that's not.
Yeah, because I was on the other corner.
You're across?
Yeah.
Which
I
one are
was,
you?
yeah,
Okay.
in the cream house with the brown
Okay.
fence, yeah. And I know, because I was always out there doing it, so.
Okay.
You know,
There was,
Yeah.
but there was a stretch there where the people who own that, the city told me weren't here.
Oh, that I don't know. It could be the rental that was kitty corner for me, but
That could be,
I know we always had ours done.
okay.
But I'm just saying, that's part of living by a school,
Yeah, no, it is.
yeah.
And some people are really, really good.
yeah, but keep in mind that all
Some
these
people
people
are
on
not.
10th Avenue didn't want that sidewalk, or a bunch of them.
But I think
didn't want it.
everybody would say they didn't want a sidewalk, because they don't have to worry about
Yeah.
taking care of it.
But I'm just saying,
So-
is this the point where we're gonna go out and fight a little battle with community members over something?
I think it's been there long enough that they'd probably be over it.
How long does it take them to, if it snows 6 inches, how long does it take them to go from the high school to the middle school?
15, 20 minutes maybe?
To, I'm sorry.
Well, blowing the snow off the sidewalk.
Oh, just down 10th? If, it depends how much, I mean, 6 inches of wet snow, it could take a lot longer than if it was dry snow. But if they're brooming, I would say to go the stretch of 10th that we do, I'd say it's maybe 10 minutes on the fast side. You know, if it's heavier snow, it could be closer to a half hour maybe, but,
So when they go down 10th, where do they turn on, Door Street or Edison?
they stop doing the sidewalk right across from central office, right at Door Street. And then depending on where they're going, if they're going to east or west or wherever, you know. Sometimes they'll go down 10th and then they cut across the east. The few times I've had to do it, that's the way I went. Get east, then north, then west, and then come back on Elm. So,
Have you looked at actually like going to the company direct versus going through, using a middleman? Not that I don't want to support our local businesses, but that's a lot of money.
to buy direct from John Deere.
Yeah. With us being a school, I think that,
Well, if we
that could,
can't- They give us a municipal discount, which I think was in the ballpark of like $6,000.
okay.
So I know we get a municipal discount on it. I don't know if I can buy direct. I mean, I could call and ask, but I would expect
It
that
might be
that's
worth
kind of
checking
what
into.
the intent of this is, you know, the municipal discount is to give,
Right.
give that break. But I've never heard of anybody going directly to a company
Okay.
for
I
a
think,
piece of equipment like this.
When you buy this from wherever you buy, if it needs more service than your guys want to do,
Correct.
that's where you're going with it, right?
Correct. And I know that when we purchased one in the past, we elected to take a price that was about $500 cheaper from an out-of-town rep. And that was, we paid for that 500 over and over and
Hauling
over.
the machine over to somewhere
Well,
else.
either hauling it there, or if we did bring it here,
Well, you didn't
you
buy
know,
it
just
here.
support capital. I mean, it was a bad
Mhm.
taste in
Yeah,
people's
bad
mouth.
taste.
Okay. Which I do understand that. I'm just thinking that this is really a lot.
This is not a lot of money for a 30 horsepower diesel.
No,
I mean, this is essentially a little tractor.
A little tractor, yeah.
Yeah.
The hydraulics. it's
Well,
got a
right, that's why I was
pretty
asking the
big
size, but like, I would think it'd be more around 25, maybe 30. Not in the 40s is where I would think it would be, but.
Not for a John Deere.
Right, you're buying
Yeah.
a John Deere, and
Yeah.
this is a big deal, I mean, if.
It
We
is
could
our
have an
life, I
argument here
mean,
if you were pushing the Kubota,
yeah,
Oh, boy.
and that's just the way it is, you can go out and talk to
I'm a
lots
little
of people.
partial to GEDs, well.
they have.
It's the lawnmower
this-
conversation.
This
August
would be
minute.
the fourth one of these units that we've had, and they have been wonderful. Every snow morning, I mean, you could take away my guy's left arm, don't touch this thing. I mean, it is that pivotal to their getting their job done. Without it, they can't operate. That's why we need two of them. To contract this out, I don't even want to fathom what that looks like. I mean, we have these pieces of equipment because they're reliable, they're user-friendly. I can put my night shift custodians on them if we have events at night for whatever events, sporting events throughout the winter. These things are critical to us providing a safe, accessible building. I mean,
Yeah,
I
I'm
know
not,
it's
I'm
a
not
lot
doubting
of
that at
money,
all, yeah.
But like Andy said, that's not really,
Now, the middle
it's
school.
not really a lot of money. It really
Right.
isn't when you start pricing out equipment like this.
At the middle school, we lease that Bobcat, correct?
Correct. We own the broom, and then we rent the Bobcat and the blower.
Is
Every-
that
every winter.
costly? Bless you.
Bless
Well, I've debated that for a while.
Right.
We don't need 3 lawnmowers in the summer. We need at least 3, we need 3 pieces of equipment in the winter, especially if one goes down, you know, say something happens to that Bobcat, we take one of these over that, you know.
Exactly.
We need 3 to operate.
Aren't these cheaper than the Bobcats?
Much. I priced out a different style, it was articulating Bobcat, and that one was in the 50s. I didn't even put that on here. They were having a problem trying to find a mower that could attach with that, align with what we need anyway, so it was incomplete bid, but
Okay.
we did talk to them. When you look at this versus like a tractor style, we've looked at last year we demoed a Venmar. That thing was like $60-some thousand. They're just, the city has one, they're great machines, but when you put a cab on something that's more tractor sized, or the body of a tractor versus this front mount, the visibility gets shut down, the turn radius is a lot bigger. You know, you're doing a lot of backing up with units like that, which I don't like.
And that's time.
It's time and it's safety.
Mhm.
It's always dangerous when you back anything up. So with these things, they literally almost turn as tight as a 0 turn. So this style provides the visibility, the turning radius, the safety things, and the mechanical side of it. I mean, they're, like I said, we've had 3 of them certainly since I've been here, and probably, I don't know if Tim had another one prior to
Did
me.
we buy
but
one used once?
And the one we're trading in is the one that we bought used, yeah.
Okay. And then
Found
my
it.
other question would be, instead of leasing that Bobcat, what about keeping this one, this third one? Or, you know, I know you really want it to run every day, you want it to run. It's
Right.
as opposed to, like myself, I mean, saying, well, it's not running today, but I'll get it fixed and it'll get going.
I'm not convinced that that would be the best spend of money. When I look at a unit like this for $40,000, okay, if we rent that skid steer for 10 years, that's $40,000. At the end of 10 years, we would have something. Well, that's fair enough, but the nice thing with that leasing, we have virtually no maintenance on that thing. We don't even change the oil, we don't put tires on, we don't do anything. They
And you
drop
get
it
a new
off.
one every couple
and they
years.
pick- It's almost a new one every year. So it takes the maintenance possibility out of the equation. Women's does a great job working with us on it. If there's ever any issues, they try to bring another machine to put it in its place.
How much do we pay for that lease?
4,000 a year.
And so you were saying that it wouldn't be advantageous for us to
It-
lease
it-
another
it-
piece?
It may be, but well, I shouldn't say it may be. I don't think it is right now, because if we buy that other piece of equipment, it's not gonna be utilized year-round, and it will add an increased maintenance cost to it. And the chance that something major could go wrong, when you start repairing things like this, they're in the thousands. That Bobcat has a lot of advantages with the snow piles that we do get at the way that the busing is set up at the middle school. The city and us work fairly well together, but nobody wants the snow pile, right?
Mm-hmm.
And with how the bus lanes are, and there's no boulevard between the sidewalk and the curb, there's really nowhere for that city to push it, and we end up getting large piles. That skid steer is at least 70 horse, sometimes closer to 80 horse skid steer. That thing has, twice the horsepower as these things, so on those snow piles, it works a lot nicer. Is it possible to do it with these? Yeah, but again, when you're in the morning trying to get cleaned up, ready for kids to arrive, that skid steer has its benefits.
Is that a bucket or a blower you're moving those piles?
Blower.
Blower.
He's got a bucket too, doesn't he?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yep.
when needed.
Mhm.
Yeah,
So-
he's got the bucket blower and the sweep.
And the sweeper.
Well, I think we should just move this recommended bid along.
We can't, help me wrap my head, and maybe I'm just because I'm tired, but help me understand why we would not want to pay $4,000 a year for a lease and then buy the attachments that we need versus spending $41,000 and up on actually owning equipment that we would have to maintain and everything else.
You're
Right.
saying lease something instead of buying this?
Yeah, and then if we wanted to, we could either keep this one or we could sell
Because
this one.
This unit gets run year-round.
Mhm.
I don't know what a lease would cost to go year-round, but I'm sure it wouldn't be.
So it's only during the school,
The skid steer is just for winter snow removal.
okay.
Yeah.
Well, maybe we want to price out what a lease would be for year
For
round.
one of these units?
Mhm.
Okay, I don't.
But we bought this one in 2007, or is it 2000?
It's a 2007 model. We bought it used in 2015.
Okay.
So, and we knew that we had, we were on borrowed time. The one before that was basically unusable. It was
The one
over.
caught on fire?
No, that was the tractor. It was over 5,000 hours, and I think the guys basically parked it unless they absolutely needed it as a backup. It wasn't very usable. They had a ride-on tractor that they used more for mowing because that thing was just beat up to no end, and that's when we bought that.
How many hours did that one have?
That was over 5,000.
Okay, so 4,000 is getting towards the end.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, most people's lawnmowers at home, I mean, I had one that I had for 5 years, and I used it to snow blow and mow, and it had 800 hours on it after 5 years. And I used it for other things, to food plots and stuff like that, but, I mean, that was 5 years. I didn't even have 1,000 hours on it. I mean,
That's a lot of hours.
That's the thing, is if we lease, we don't have to worry about the hours. It's already built in and like
I
you would,
don't know
if
they
it breaks down
do
then.
leases on these, I mean, I could ask, but
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
Well,
can we
do you
even
lease
lease
by the
something
hour,
like
or
this?
do you lease, or is it
Right,
a combination?
and that's, with Quinlan's, we have a limit on hours, and they're pretty generous with us. I don't think we've ever hit the limit hour. I think they make sure that we don't get close to it.
I think it'd be worthwhile asking though.
I can look into it. I
Okay.
mean, it would take some figuring, to really pencil everything out to see if it is an option, what that leasing would look like for one of these, and what the pros and the cons of it would be. I think that there's a lot of variables when you look at a machine like this and how we use it.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at a lease setting. With that skid steer, it's pretty straightforward. It's just, here you go, don't hit the hours, and we never have it at a point where we need to change oil or do anything to it because it goes back to them.
Right,
It's one of their demos that they sell anyways. So,
yeah. I mean, I would be curious to find out what the lease amount would be. I mean, there should be, a little bit of work on,
Yeah, I can
I would
ask.
say,
but
we
I
have the
don't-
money now, you buy it now, it's good for 10 years, 12 years.
Mhm.
We don't know where we're going with money in the next 10 or 12 years.
well, right.
And,
That's what I'm worried about. The next couple of years is not gonna be good.
Do all of these vendors lease?
I don't know of any of them at least. I've never explored that for this type of model, I guess.
Yeah. Well, no, unless you ask.
Yeah.
So, but we'll move it forward, but yeah, if you could bring us the numbers to the full board meeting of.
If
yeah,
it's a lease
if it's a-
option?
Yep, if it's
Okay.
available, yeah,
Yeah.
yep.
Or if Bobcat has a comparable piece of equipment that we could lease through Quinlan.
It's somewhat
Yeah.
comparable, but not, it's articulating, and like I said, I got a price on it, but they couldn't, they could provide the blower and the broom, but they couldn't provide the mower deck. And
Oh.
Mike was still looking at that, and I can follow up with him and make sure that he has it, but with just the two attachments and that piece of equipment, it was in the 50s.
Well, to
already,
buy
so-
it, yeah, I think you're talking about leasing it through Quinlan?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I'll ask him if he can find something that would mow too, you know, that's,
Yeah,
these things are, you can find, a Bobcat does really good at this, or,
Right.
that Venmar does really, or Ventrac, sorry, that Ventrac does really good at something else, but as an overall performance for the three things we use it for, these things are just, they're in that sweet spot, they work,
yeah, and I understand that too.
and, yeah, they're vital for us to have this campus taken, well, all
Mhm.
campuses ready for kids on a snow day, especially this one.
Okay.
Call me
And
a
Jake's crew
nerd.
does a great job getting the snow removed rather quickly.
Call me a nerd, but I've looked into buying
Wake
little
me up.
Bobcats
Nice.
to run around on our piece of property, and
Yeah.
Sometime.
even
I
a
get up and get out there
2010
and join
Bobcat
them in
with
and
thousands of hours on it
do
is
our block.
ridiculously expensive.
That's
For
good.
some
Right.
reason, right now, equipment is just
They're crazy.
really
Yeah.
It's
expensive.
crazy.
Yeah, I had a skid steer, so
You can easily spend 50, 60,000 on just a little piece of equipment.
oh, I know.
I mean, you go to get a nicer, if you get into the commercial grade like zero turn mower,
Mhm.
you're paying $12,000 to $15,000 now.
Mhm.
I mean, it's just crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, back, even when I started in 15, I think, you can get them for like 7 or 8.
Mhm.
It's just nuts. Everything is, and I don't see an end. I mean,
Right.
there's no end in sight until something crashes.
Right.
Yeah.
We won't go into that, but.
Okay.
And if we did have to lease something, who knows if we could even get it through Reister and Schnell, so then we'd be dealing with
And availability
The-
is an issue.
bad taste in people's mouths again.
Yeah.
But I think it's worth a call to them to see
Yeah,
if we can
I'll
lease.
definitely ask and see what they would
Yeah.
offer and
Yep.
bring that answer back to the board.
Sorry, I closed the document. Did you look at Rue Motors too?
The Rue was the Kubota.
Okay, okay.
Yep. And like I said, they don't offer a 60-inch broom or blower, and I don't know why. But we have 5-foot sidewalks in
Mhm.
some places, and it doesn't,
Right,
I don't want to have to pay to do it twice.
right, yeah.
So,
If you're having them get a lease from Reassurance now, or if you can get one, are you having them get a lease from everybody else to a lease
Price, yes.
price?
Yep,
Okay, just wanted to be clear.
yep.
Well, what if you can't get one from Reassurance now? Can you stop?
No.
No?
don't stop till you
Clear on
find
that?
one from someone.
Well, I mean, because the other, because the other ones might offer it. I don't know. The first one is going to be the most difficult because that's the one you're going to have to figure out a little, tweaks and ins and outs of it.
Angie, I'll ask, but I'll just be honest, I don't know that I would have the ability to make a good recommendation if it was out there.
Mhm.
I don't, when you start looking at penciling that out, I'd really have to track through a year,
Mhm.
What are we doing to these pieces of equipment? I can go and ask if there is lease options and find out the stipulations, but to overlay that on exactly how the guys use these machines and how we could run them in tandem
Right.
to try and
But I think
keep
you-
hours
yeah.
or not, or, to make a good, honest recommendation, I don't know that I'll be able to without going through a season and trying to track that.
Okay.
So I mean, I can look into it for
Yeah.
the next purchase, you know, and come back and let you know at the board meeting what I find out and what's available, but I don't feel like I could make a responsible recommendation on a lease either way, to be honest with you, until we go through a year to understand what they're running into. I mean, when you start looking at these attachments, you know, what's included in that, how is it gonna cost us, can we repair them ourselves? I mean, we have a lot of ability with our groundskeeper, Jeff Walmer. He's a wrench head. He rebuilds gearboxes when he needs to. He uses the lathe in the middle, in the metal shop, and those kids to make pieces and parts and make this stuff operate. If it's a lease, I don't even know if that's an option for us. You know, they may say, no, it's our piece of equipment. You have to
Right.
bring it to us for me. So for me to truly overlay all the aspects of that, I don't know that I could.
Well, I thought you said that we would lease the unit, but we would buy all the attachments.
That was my suggestion, yeah.
Right, and I don't know how that works, you know what I mean? I
So
just don't know that-
any lease bid you get would have to include the price of the attachments.
Correct, and that's where I'm saying, you know, in 2 weeks to have that full analysis, so that I don't know that I could have a responsible recommendation at that point for a lease option if it's even available.
So, and what was the reasoning for wanting to get rid of this one?
It's just getting old. It's 20 or 16 years old. It's pushing 4,000 hours. The last one we had at 5,000 hours was junk. It's been fairly good. It's had a few problems with the starter. The hydraulic or the hydrostatic drive is getting noisy. We don't really know what's going on with that, but the other one, it's not near as noisy. So there's obviously something going on, but we've had injector pump issues with it in the past.
And Jeff has fixed all these?
What's that?
Jeff, you said Jeff was
Jeff can fix some, but some
Okay.
of them, like the injector pump, we had to take the register for sure.
Okay,
This unit was a used one that we bought in 15, and you know, when you buy a piece of used equipment, you don't really know all the issues with it, and that may have something with why we're seeing problems with hydrostatic. You know, was the oil changed properly? Was the maintenance done properly on it? We don't know. So this winter it started to show some telltale signs that we're gonna have some repairs on it, and I don't wanna start sticking good money into a bad piece of equipment.
Do these units have hydrostatic motors on each wheel, or is it a hydrostatic transmission?
Correct. Transmission. Sorry, did I misspeak?
No,
Oh,
I don't
okay.
think you said,
Okay,
or I didn't catch it.
okay,
Yeah,
okay.
so,
you don't want to mess with hydrostatics too much.
no, they get expensive in a quicker.
See it coming, get rid of it.
Yeah. I know it's a lot of money, I get it, and I, you know, we need to be responsible with every penny we spend, I understand that. I just truly believe in these pieces of equipment and how important they are for us.
Okay,
And from what I've seen and witnessed from Jeff, just stopping in occasionally, he takes care of this equipment like it's his own. Yeah, he's very
He's good.
meticulous. Yeah,
Mhm.
keeps things clean and nice. Just go out and look in the shop where he works at. It's pretty clean.
Mhm.
okay. All right, anything else? No? All right. The next Building and Grounds meeting will be Monday, July 10th. And with that, we'll adjourn. I don't think I need a motion, right? Sometimes we do
We
motions,
can adjourn
sometimes we
by
don't.
consensus.
Okay. All in favor of adjournment?
Aye.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. Everyone could stand for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Barbie, can you take roll call, please?
Kristen Matt Miller.
Here.
Jill Maddick Nelson.
Here.
Myself here. Heidi Proyett. I'm sorry, Heidi Siebert. Julie Sprague.
Here.
Danny Pyatt is in attendance, along with Angie Schreiber and Dave Bardo.
And Catherine Sol.
And Catherine Solon, I'm sorry.
Any public comments? All right, we'll start with the Q4 behavior data update. Is anyone really itching to go first?
I can go first.
All right, fantastic, thank you.
Do you want me to come
Come
up
on
here?
down, yeah.
We would love for you to come down here. You even have a seat if you'd like. Or you can stand.
I also have Rachel's West data. I know that Heidi had it too, but I don't see her, so I can present West data. So for North, we had 91% of students with one or less office referral in Q4. Top behavior referrals are still physical aggression, defiance, disrespect, and disruption. Monitoring the behaviors using EduClimber and following our student study team procedures. We are utilizing BEST interventions, monitoring goals, and supporting students through the SSTs, so the student study team, reviewing data and other student supports, and then we do have a PBIS Tier 1 and then Tier 2 and Tier 3 team. Internal teams also are PBIS Tier 1 and then Tier 2 and Tier 3 behavior teams. We did have one in-school suspension during Q4 that was for disruption and disrespect, 5 out-of-school suspensions for physical aggression and endangering behavior. The 5 out-of-school suspensions were the same student. We did have parent meetings and we did review and revise the IEP. We had a total of 483 positive referrals during Q4 for a total for the school year of 1,400 positive referrals. Also, we utilized Class Dojo. In Class Dojo, we had 7,603 Class Dojo messages throughout the school year. In May, we had 1,999 messages, 684 stories posted, and total for the school year, we had 27,282 positive points earned by students. Questions regarding North data?
In prior meetings, if you talked about Tier 1, 2, 3. Okay, that's what I thought.
We didn't talk about the Class Dojo data. North and West didn't. I know Tom has spoke on the Class Dojo. For West, they had 98% of the students having one or less office referral, 0 in-school suspensions, 4 out-of-school suspensions, and 189 positive referrals. They too were revising behavior plans, creating behavior plans if not already implemented. They continued to monitor the student study team and Tier 2 and Tier 3. They also had a Power of Our Words book study with a second half or second semester and utilized BEST interventions. North also had a whole school book study using Power of Our Words. West also utilized building PBIS grade level and Tier 2 and Tier 3 teams. I do have their Class Dojo data. They had 7,365 Dojo messages throughout the school year. In May, they had 1,050 messages. They posted 535 stories, and they had 750 positive points earned throughout the school year. Thank you. It's very similar.
Yeah.
On up front. Okay. So for East in the Q4, we had 92% of the students that had one or less referrals, where the student was considered the offender. We had 1 in-school suspension. And that was really for a student losing the privilege to go on a field trip, for repeated behaviors that not keeping his hands to himself, not being safe with his body, and how he treats others. We had 5 out-of-school suspensions. 1 was a full day, and the other 4 were partial. So I looked at, whenever a student is sent home for a behavior reason, we document it. So 2 were half days. 1 was like at the very end of the day, like 2:30. And the other one was midway through the afternoon also. We had 12 positive postcards. And I'll be honest, I don't push or expect the staff to write postcards. What I see is a stack of postcards brought in or entered into campus. And I put the dojo data in there, and I think that's a much better reflection of how teachers are communicating and updating parents. So a year total for dojo messaging to parents was 12,122 messages. And our highest month was May with 2,230 messages. We had 521 stories. So what a story is, if there's an event going on in your class or something, a photo that the teachers want to share or an event that's coming up that's posted on your school story. And positive feedback points for the year, 12,879. So we encourage, our goal is to have 100% of our families connected to dojo and communicating with teachers. We're using the same tiers of interventions as North and West. We did looking at our best data and noticing that a common intervention is positive feedback. We experimented with a peer observation. So we asked the teachers to find a 15-minute time and find a partner, an accountability partner, go into their room for 15 minutes and tally and document their positive interactions with students. And it's based off of what in the BEST talks about non-conditional positive reinforcement. So you're not setting any conditions for that student to be recognized, you're just recognizing the student. Hey, I saw that you really worked hard on that problem, and I bet that makes you feel good that you stuck with it and persevered. So when we met at the end of the year to talk about things we wanted to continue, we said we definitely want to continue those peer observations, and not only maybe with the language that we use with students, but strategies that we're using. And the teachers, even though we're a really small school and there's not many opportunities where you can get in and watch your colleague teach. So they thought it was really valuable, and we want to keep that up. So that's our fourth quarter report. Okay.
Excellent.
Yep.
You guys all have a copy, right? So we ended up going with like a year to date. We kind of talked about that the last time that we were here. So I'm gonna let Teal kind of take over.
Sure.
We really dug in.
Yeah, so you can see the column for term 4 there. We got broken up by whole school and then each of the grade levels as well. As a whole school, we had 183 positive referrals during term 4, bringing our total for the year at 1,169. Our greatest positives in fourth quarter were around grades 6 and 7. For negative referrals, we had 427 as a whole school for that fourth quarter period. You can see the breakdown for grade level. And once again, most challenging two were grades 6 and 7. Our big 5 behaviors did not change. Those remain the same, although several of them went down significantly. But the big 5 remain disrespect, disruptive behavior, language, physical aggression, or mistreatment or bullying. One thing that we included in here for you guys was our attendance rate. That was one thing that we thought went really well over the school year. Overall, we're at 93.17. Our 6 and 7 attendance was right around the 92% mark, and grades 4 and 5 were around 94% to average that out. Some of our top resolutions that we use, contacting families, conferencing with the students, staff managing, that happens a lot in grades 4 or 5. Removal from setting, referral to a counselor, detentions, restorative meetings, or bringing parents or caregivers in for a meeting, and creating a restorative plan. We had a couple of long-term data points that we wanted to share with you guys that we dug in with our teams and shared with our teams as well. Over the school year, we had 247 students, or 51%, where a student receive at least one positive referral, and that's aside from, you know, all of our students receive like a birthday card. So some of those are universal, so we're getting to every single student, but that's in addition to those.
And this doesn't take into account, like, we use Class Dojo also at the middle school, but mainly for 4 or 5. So we, there is a discrepancy, like there's a lot of messaging that happens on Class Dojo, and we don't know, you can't always quantify everything, or even that positive feedback. And then with 6th and 7th grade, we don't make it mandatory to use Class Dojo. They tend to move more into the emailing, but we do have at least 1 to 2 teachers from each grade on it, and then we have a school-wide. And we do see our families do really appreciate using Class Dojo, and then we always communicate, I'm sure with the elementary too. You don't get into like arguments, like if you start to see things kind of going south, even like with an email, it's better just to stop and sometimes just make that phone call and have a conversation. So that's something that we talk about a lot with all of our staff too.
Yeah, and even some, like even down to some of our paraprofessionals, like some I know had a goal where they reached out to every single kid in their whole grade that they worked with, because they're in lunch with them, they supervise them before school, after school, and so some of them reached every single student at their grade level, and that's not included in that positive count that was in there as well. And we've talked with our teams too, how do we make sure that that gets documented and in there so that that's a little bit more accurate in years to come. We had 143 students, or about 30% of the student population, sometime in the school year receive at least 1 referral. I just checked and did another stat for students who received 3 or more, and that goes down to just 22% of our population. So we do lose a good 8% there just in that first initial universal one. We had 22 different students receive or have at least 1 ISS this year, and we had 9 students, a little under half, that repeated it and ended up with in-school suspension more than once. We had 9 that received out-of-school suspension throughout the year, and 0 students had repeated out-of-school suspension. So that was a big success for us in terms of the reentry meetings that we have with the students and with the families, and making sure that we have a plan for them moving forward. That was very successful. And then a couple stats around tardies and attendance there at the bottom for you guys. We had about 21 students in total, or 4.3%. struggle to make it on class or on time to class consistently. And by consistent, I mean they had at least 6 tardies within the quarter's time span, so each of those 4 quarters. And then for truancy and attendance, we had 118 students that reached 10 plus absences. So that's when we start really working with them extensively, and about 30 of those families we met with and had kind of formal agreements around truancy throughout the school year.
So just one thing to note too, at the middle school with a 4, 5, and 6, 7, we don't have bells. We don't use them. So We have our clocks, we have our teachers focusing on that time. So really the tardies is really just 6th and 7th grade. And then tardy for 4th and 5th grade at the beginning of the day, which their attendance looks different than 6th, 7th. So we have 2 separate attendance calendars. But I feel like the teachers were heard. They wanted to have some improvement around being on time to class, and the biggest concern of timing is when our 6th and 7th graders go to specials. So they go like in the afternoon, and then they have to either come back to their core classroom, or they leave their core and they go to their specials class like Fayette or something like that. So I think we did a good job. We communicated it very often, and just really, we still have repeat offenders, so we're just trying to figure that out, like what's the root cause? Like, why is it because of organization? You just don't care? Like, what could we do to help more like with an intervention? So I think the first steps happened this year, and now we're already looking ahead to even setting like goals with some of the students around that, and if they do meet them, giving them, you know, high five or nice job, or having like a way to go, you know, kind of thing like that too. So yeah, the office is busy. The office handles, we don't have like an in-school suspension room, like we deal with that. We have our behavior specialists, but we do not focus our in-school suspension with them. We focus on them continuing with the support of the student either in the classroom or for students that are coming out of the classroom to get support, but we do not focus our in-school suspensions with an outside classroom or entity. If we need help from hour to hour, they'll help out, but we don't want to tie them down. That's not what our goal is with that, so it's really the office handles it. And one thing we've been talking about too, like, we're proud that we didn't have a lot of out-of-school suspension. The ones that had out-of-school suspension were warranted. Typically it's physical aggression. But the in-school suspensions, it's hard because they're getting some work given to them, but unless you're sitting, those are the kids that need that one-to-one help too, like they're just not getting what they need. So with a couple of students, we were able to set up some virtual classroom settings, and some of our teachers feel more comfortable doing that than others, so we don't force it, but we always ask it. But a lot of times too, we're talking like, okay, so immediate consequences are ideal, right? So then if we do it just like that, then you don't really give time for that teacher to pre-plan and have that conversation with the student. They're missing out on content, and that's a struggle I think that we all have. We don't get any kickback. But the parents understand it. They understand there's a consequence. Till we worked very consistently together to make sure that what was done with one, what was done with the other. But that's a struggle.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So we just wanted to share that.
What kind of questions do you guys have?
Is there like a standard that we're shooting for attendance, like, or like, does that average, like, what does that 93% mean? Is that good? Is it bad?
That's good. I mean,
Yeah.
anything over 90%. Because it goes on our school report.
It does.
too.
That's a category on the school report card, and then it'll indicate what the state is, and then if we're above or below that.
So like this, our goal is.
Our goal would be 100%.
Well, yeah.
But
Yes,
I think we've been right around at the middle school, and again, it's weird because our attendance is different now, 4, 5, and 6, 7. So this is what we feel it is, but the state still might report out a little bit differently. But I think we've been around that between 92 and 96 at the middle school for quite some time.
And you are running two systems, like you said, elementary and middle, you know, so there are differences because middle school kids, of course, travel from class to class, but.
That's a good question.
Yeah, I'm not sure if anybody else checked their attendance rates out yet, but.
One thing I was wondering was, if you could, for like next year or whatever, can you also report on like how many bus incident reports you're receiving from like bus drivers?
Well, we don't, okay, here's how it works currently with bus drivers. And we're trying to always figure this thing out a little bit better. Angela used to be one of the main people at Maliette, and we had a really good system. And so now we're morphing. As you lose people, then you have to carry on more jobs. So Tim and Carmen, we worked through some things we probably all should have worked through a little bit earlier in the year. There was a really clear set situation where if the bus driver had a concern just like with a teacher, they're gonna try to manage it the best they can themselves. A lot of them do contact homes themselves, and they nip it right in the bud, just like a teacher can do. The ones that sometimes, but not all our teachers and all our bus drivers handle things the same way, right? Every route is different, every classroom is different. So what we noticed towards the middle of the year, we just really had a good conversation with Tim and said, this is what we need. They were really supposed to send over a report. And this bus report is supposed to be faxed over to us, and then we look at it. That's not always happening. We get it, then they're gonna either call or send an email. We work through that with them. They have video footage on the bus, so that's, they might just send it directly over to us, or we might request something if somebody says there's some bullying or something, and every school, all of us kind of work through that. So there are definitely bus issues, but it didn't pull up on the top 5 behaviors.
Okay.
And
Could
not
it
everything is
be
being
like
reported.
physical aggression, it just happens on the bus? Would
If it's
that
a-
be counted in there?
We would call it bus.
Yep, it would be labeled
Oh,
under bus.
okay.
And we can definitely, run it
But that's
and
a good
add that
question,
too, for next year,
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, I guess I would like to see it on, from all the schools, because that's part, yeah.
Bus misconduct.
Yeah.
That's been reported.
Yep.
Because sometimes, like I said, there's some people that come directly to us, some
Mm-hmm.
go directly to the bus company, some go directly to the bus driver.
So
And
there
it's
needs
through
to be a
investigation.
formula created that everybody's doing the same
We're
thing. and-
trying, and we are going to meet with
Yeah.
Maliette drivers this summer and hopefully tighten some of that.
Though if the driver contacts the family directly, we wouldn't know that, right? They wouldn't send over an incident report
Well, it's just like if a
necessarily?
staff contacts,
Right.
a family, we may not know, but if it continues and happens
Yeah.
after that conversation, then they bring it to our attention. And that's what we get a lot of times. They might say, the bus
Exactly.
driver, that's usually the first thing we ask. Has there been contact with the family?
Yep.
We think you need to investigate and figure that, or yes, we did call the family and we haven't gotten anywhere. It's the same conversations we have pretty much with, some of our staff. And the reason why we run into some of these is because of lack of clarity, right? Like, who is supposed to take responsibility?
And that question was posed really just to the data, that it's gonna be
Yep.
skewed because it's not an internal system. So the driver may contact the family,
Yeah.
but it's not in
not,
whatever
yeah.
reporting
It comes
system we're
to us
using, so.
when a parent, a student, or a bus driver, or Tim communicates with
Yep.
us, there's a concern.
Yeah.
So
And it
just
happens
keeping
in
that
all
note,
levels.
yeah.
Yeah, that can look differently too, it could just be an email, most
might be
of,
just an
sometimes it's the report.
investigation. Yeah.
Sometimes it's just a film segment, like a 15-minute film segment that gets sent over and you kinda gotta decipher through it. And it looks different, but.
Yeah, and we've had situations, I'm sure every one of our schools had, where the bus company or bus driver's like, we can't have this student on our bus because of A, B, C, D, we've done this kind of stuff, and then, we've had to come up with some plans for some families, and they have been good about that. Like, we try not to do it where you lose all rights to transportation, because then that falls into your attendance, because then there's truancy, right? So we talk through those scenarios.
Yeah.
So Tim does allow the bus drivers to come directly to your office, not to him?
Bus drivers do not come to our office.
Okay. Okay.
The communication usually comes through Tim or
Good,
Carmen.
good.
Unless the driver, like if Teal's
Yeah.
on duty, the driver might say,
Which
hey.
happens.
Yeah, which
And
happens.
so it's voice to voice
Okay.
then.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just didn't want Tim and Carmen to be left out of the loop of an incident that's happening
Right.
on their buses.
No.
I think they're.
I'm sure there's some
they're-
mishaps in both directions,
Yeah, yeah.
that we don't always have that. But a lot of times you investigate and there really wasn't anything, but we still try to make sure everybody's aware. Like, our first intervention or consequence on the bus is, do you have a seating arrangement? And the buses that have seating, assigned seats, do much better.
We're
And
going
those that
to
don't,
try
that's
to
the first
assist,
thing.
yeah.
Well, we can't have everybody sitting in the front row. Well, I understand that, but what else could we do? So talking through that, but each person's a little bit different in what that looks like. And some buses are more full. And some buses are full for 5 minutes, and then it's released. Like, you could have 60-some kids sitting on a bus for a good 10 minutes, and that's not much good gonna happen at that point in time. And then when they start getting off, then it tends to loosen up a little bit. But there's definitely a hierarchy on a bus, and the bus driver sets the tone.
Yeah.
It's always the last kid that you want to get off first.
I always appreciate your feedback because the 4, 5, 6, 7 split is really interesting. There's a lot of nuances. And so I think you two do an exceptional job breaking down the data, sharing out, and really also pointing out those differences like the bells don't ring and things like that. It's a lot to juggle, so I appreciate all the work that you guys put in. And I would also note the paraprofessionals, Teal, you shared that the paras were making contact with parents directly. And I've heard a lot of feedback on that, positive feedback, because that para is with the student frequently throughout the day and arguably in some cases knows the student the best or has the best relationship and rapport with the student. So that feedback is received differently because parents feel confident and trusting. Not that they don't trust other staff, but if somebody's with my kid the most during the day, that's who I'm going to feel most comfortable communicating with or having some form of communication. So I've only received positive feedback about that.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you.
So I'm going to ask a question that I asked the elementary last time. So there's an uptick on the back half of the school year. Is it possible that we have higher expectations at the end of the school year, or is it a higher rate of behavior?
It's a lot. We were at our wits' end as adults, right? What we see at the middle school is we run incentives for our end of the year activities. So that last month, except for 4th grade, they have a celebration. So we still get behavior reports, but they don't affect if a kid is participating in an activity. But let's say for 7th grade, they had some they have the same expectations, but it just seems sometimes, it's kind of like when you see if they have a barricade with police out on the road and they're looking for like a speed trap. I mean, it can be kind of like that sometimes, I'm just being honest with you, and we do talk about that with our staff, about like, did you really think through with this referral? Well, and then on their side as a teacher or any staff, we've retaught them this many times. Like, we've done this, we've had this conversation. So there's that give and take, but just having that conversation. So I think it's a little bit of both.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, but one thing that we did notice right away is, like, you start the year out, you're very intentional about those positive referrals, right? And you're intentional, those are the ones that are actually counted in Infinite Campus because somebody took time to put it in there. But then you can see how that's a huge decline in term 4. So that's definitely something that we identified with our leadership team and talked about.
Reporting fatigue.
And if you're feeling like you're getting taught, and again, it goes both ways. Were we giving enough positive feedback to our teachers? Did they not feel like they were being supported? And there's just a lot of nuances that go into it. So, yeah.
Yeah, good question. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jill, can you look at your sheet that looks like this?
It might be in there. Or it's here.
I gave you one with some of my notes on it.
No, I don't know, does that have, oh yeah, that one does.
But we're not looking at that. We're looking at one that kind of looks like this. This is
The one with your notes.
This is the same report. We tried to be consistent, quarter 1, 2, 3, 4, so you could kind of see a layout of how each quarter has gone. I've got highlighted there, the third box down on there, 204 non-attendance referrals from 125 students. Those are some pretty good numbers considering the non-attendance referrals from the last 3 quarters. Our negative behavior referrals overall were up, and a lot of those came from the attendance. So that top box is the number of referrals overall was 953, and that's the second highest throughout the year. And then that 616 was the highest throughout the year as referrals from attendance. So again, in the high school, there's 3 for every 3
tardies you get, something happens. So 3 at lunch detention, 6 at lunch detention, 9 in ISS, which is why we've got the ISS is broken down for attendance and non-attendance.
Nope, that's what I was gonna say.
Okay.
She just on that.
Other points of reference, that attendance piece up there, if you look all the way down to the box on the right on the first page here, we had a drop there as well in the amount of students that received 0 and 1. We went from 94.5% to 81%, which is, it's a big drop. A lot of it we're suspecting has to do with that attendance piece in the last quarter. On the back, we've got our positive referral data. So we do encourage those positive referrals, much like Tom was saying, but we're not requiring that. But in quarters 2 and 3, we did some events where we had, like at a staff meeting, we'd have everybody grab a couple postcards and send them out at a staff meeting. And then, what did you want to explain there, Matt?
I was just saying that obviously at the end of the school year, the high school teachers are very focused on what second semester looks like in kids passing, graduating. And those phone calls are happening, but they're maybe not writing a positive phone call, but they're either acknowledging that this work has been completed, they're just not putting it in their system. So I know there's a lot of work being done. It's just not reflected for data just because of the hustle and bustle of trying to get the stuff done, credits complete, graduation, all those things at the end of the school year. So like Heather said, it's a busy time of the year, and unfortunately that sometimes gets lost.
Yeah, we have a lot of meetings with families during that time. We've got a lot of phone conversations with families that time, but none of that logged as positive referral data. Then that little asterisk down there, we left on there from past quarters. I'm on the back page since we were solidifying thresholds for students with high referral numbers to be addressed by our behavior strategists, and we'll get into some of those when we present on the handbook. What questions do you have?
So this is kind of to everybody, based on that last comment just made me think. So the people that we have on our plans right now, do they come back started on those same plans, or do we wipe the slate clean and give them a fresh?
We had indicated that those plans would be for the rest of the year, the rest of the school year. So we do have meetings set up with the students that were on those plans for August, and we'll discuss that with the families at that time.
So we had already met with the counseling department and Scott Sigmund, our behavior strategist, and we have postcards going home for reminder meetings set up in August, and we'll meet with those families. 8th and 9th has around 30-some meetings that are going to happen in the summer, and then it kind of trickles down just because of other systems or support set up for those students already, but each grade level has meetings set up with families and parents, along with guidance counselors and Scott, our behavior strategist.
And when we look at behavior referral data, you see 8th grade, 9th grade, 10th, 11th, 12th. So when we look at the, run the numbers of 5 or more referrals, or 10 or more referrals, 15 or more referrals, it stays kind of a gradual, not kind of, a gradual decline.
Can you remind me of the process once a negative behavioral referral is received? The staff writes it and submits it. Can you remind me of the process then?
So the staff member is instructed to call home and let that family know what had happened and that they're putting in that referral. And if the staff had taken any steps to remedy that situation, they would describe that. That referral then gets sent to Matt, Anita, or myself. It's in a behavior box, we call it, and then we go through, and if it's staff managed, that's it, then we close that out. If it requires some action on our part, then we talk with the student and their family and put in whatever resolution that comes with. Maybe it's a restorative plan or loss of privilege or Maybe it's just a conversation with the parent and we log that in as the resolution and then close it out, which means it goes into their student record, but it's out of our open behavior box.
So, is there anywhere on here that shows how many referrals require action from admin? The reason, it just seems, it seems like it's a considerable amount of time because I'm sure a bulk of them are not just staff managed closeout, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
So, and just, it's a lot on your, I know Matt's always running and gunning all the time. And I've heard Officer Schilling talk about the number of referrals to go through. So I think it's just helpful to just kind of review that process and then also know that you guys are following up on anything that's not just, not staff managed concluded, then there's action from admin. So that's presumably a lot of time, a lot of contact, a lot of follow-up on your end.
Yep, sometimes it takes us a couple of days to get there, but we always follow up with that staff member in that situation, even if it's a couple of days past, which we don't intend to. Unfortunately, it's just sometimes the nature of the beast of the day. So, but we always follow up on every single one of them.
Are you finished?
Oh yeah, I mean, sorry.
So-
I thought you have another question.
So you have these grouped into attendance and non-attendance incidents. So I'm interested a little bit in what falls under non-attendance. And then maybe I'm missing on here, but repeat offenders, if you will. You know,
How many are non-duplicate?
Pardon me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We had,
If I'm missing that, I don't get where that is.
we had, as far as the number of referrals, we didn't calculate like how many were more than one referral. Now, that being said, when I ran this report, we had 801 students on May 26th, because I ran that. I just ran the attendance on that day, because that was the last day with seniors. So you could do a little calculating.
So 801 was the total
801
population?
minus 649. And that's,
Yeah, as far as what's in there, anything other than 3 tardies, 6 tardies, or 9 tardies, which would be, everything else is included from physical aggression to tobacco to THC drugs to alcohol to throwing firecrackers in the school. Anything that falls under there would fall in that 204.
and Bobby, when you run those numbers, that will only give you the amount of students that have more than one referral. It won't, I mean, that's attendance and non-attendance referrals combined.
So would you say that your top 5 behaviors are like the same as the middle school, or how was yours compared to the middle school's top?
What did they say?
Ours was disrespect, disruptive, inappropriate language, physical aggression, and mistreatment.
Disrespect, disruptive, physical aggression, yes. Bullying, mistreatment, I guess that could go both ways. It depends on who you are and how you view things. We could probably do better a job explaining that and getting the same accurate data, so I don't know. And then language is high up there also. You know, other than attendance, I would say tobacco is pretty high on our list too.
Have we seen improvement with that having our wands available, or is it not really mattering?
We have not, we've only used the wands very sparingly, because we haven't had communication to families on how we're using those.
So when you say tobacco, is that including vape pens?
Correct.
Okay.
That's probably
the majority.
95% of it is some type of vaping device. Hardly any cigarettes or chewing tobacco.
You guys have any problem with that in middle school?
Yeah.
Vaping? Yeah, vaping. But it's just not one of the top 5?
Yeah, correct.
And I don't know if it's our top 5, but
Okay.
it's definitely creeping
Okay.
towards that top 5.
Elementaries?
I have one big
Wow.
So there's just my thought process behind this is we're looking at the behavior numbers and it's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, and we're seeing the same behavior. So how can we work together?
And much
You
like
know,
the
starting already.
Yeah. Much like the attendance, our 8th grade is high, our seniors are lower for attendance. Like you see a gradual
It's the
decline.
opposite.
You know, where you see behavior is the opposite way. Attendance is your 8th grade, your 9th grade are usually highest, and then it trickles down.
Our 10th grade did pretty good this year.
They did. They gave them a run for their money. And then we hover right around the 89% overall attendance, 8 through 12. Sometimes weekly, we run a weekly report, we share it with our staff. Sometimes we're 91, 92, sometimes creeping up high 92, 92.5, but a lot of times we're around that 89 to 90.
What grade is generally the lowest?
Seniors.
Seniors.
All the time.
Yep. They have access to cars, they can leave. A lot of them are 18 now, and they choose their own.
And that doesn't include like co-op or
Correct.
youth apprenticeship. Those are,
Legitimate.
yeah, those are
Part of
accounted
it.
for present in your attendance data.
So
Just some. go ahead.
attendance not on campus then, leaving campus. So it's not simply just not arriving and attending the assigned class, but still on site somewhere,
Or-
you're saying. Or
It's
both.
still by period, so we run
Right.
it by period, so whether they're on campus or they're just
Oh,
like
yeah.
skipping, running, it's still ran by. It's just that an 8th grader, he might attend one class and he doesn't have an opportunity to
Yes,
leave
got it.
anywhere, where a senior might just not come that day because they can.
Or I'm just gonna
Or
come
just-
for X class that I really like, or my girlfriend's in there, whatever. I don't know.
A little more flexibility as you grow or get older.
Does it change throughout the day, morning, eve, and afternoon classes?
We didn't, I mean, first hour, other than pride time, first hour is the most tardy hour, by far.
Correct. For tardies and for absence.
Makes sense.
I just ran some data when the other schools were talking about attendance. We had 587 kids, according to EduClimber, that were 90% or better. 300 kids were below 90%, and then 48 kids were below 50%.
So what are your ideas for improving attendance?
We're gonna kind of touch on some of those things. But we hope with having Amanda Moore, our social worker at the high school more often, we can combat some of those things. Because when a kid doesn't come to school the full day or all year, that really hurts your attendance. I mean, so.
Like a kid who has 5% attendance or something,
Is gonna
just
bring down 10 kids.
drains you. But having some clear guidelines as to what happens when you hit X many tardies or X many unexcused absences. Building in some incentives for, I know we're built incentive days in for 8th grade throughout the year. I'm not sure what to do with those seniors as far as getting them to stick around more. We did move our assemblies 2 years ago, I believe it was, to our pride time, because if we had assemblies at the end of the day,
They were gone.
kids were gone, getting rides from other ones, and
That's concerning to me about the schedule, that the first 2 periods of the day are now pride time and advisory, that when attendance is already the lowest in first hour, that, maybe that would be viewed as just a free time, and then that attendance at first hour would be even more poor next year. I don't know, just a thought.
I kind of look at it from the other side, that at least they're missing study hall and not math.
That what?
They're missing study hall, pride time, advisory time versus math.
A real class, yeah.
Science.
Yeah.
The flip side is they have an opportunity to have their start of their day with somebody they trust and have good rapport with, which is a motivator and an incentive for the student to come to school. So if you're starting them with somebody that they trust, kind of like a soft start to your day, you increase your chances of the student coming on time, or if not, then best case scenario, getting to second hour on time, or the first class of the day on time, then
And
be the hope.
This sounds like conversations that went around in our staff meetings, around and around and around, and there are arguments for both.
Do you know if students that are coming in and are tardy, are they walking to school, or are they being dropped off by parents? I mean, they're not bus riders unless they completely missed the bus.
Or they're there.
And they're there and they're just not going to class. Do you know like what percentage
I've
of?
probably heard every excuse in the book. I could give you 50 of them. Everything from they're taking care of their brother and sister, to their car doesn't work, to they had to stay home and shovel snow because they're the only person that does chores, to they're taking care of mom who's sick, or they really don't care about school, they don't want to be in school. I worked till 10 o'clock last night, or 11 o'clock last night. I put in 7 hours after school, and I mean, those are just a few examples of what could be going on.
Okay, so it's not one
not
specific, like
it's-
a group?
No, it's
or
really dependent on the kid and the family.
Okay.
There's so many unique situations.
Okay.
And the high school does a really good job of working with those students to come up with really great plans that seem not flawless, because nothing is, but close to it, and it's still like, bummer, it didn't work out, what do we need to change or do differently? But ultimately, the onus is on the student or the family.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We've also invited our court system in. Courtney and Meg, who I work closely with in truancy court and some other spots, she's very invested in our community and really wants to, not just punitive things, but she's really like invested in our school, and she wants to help in any way that she can. So, you know, trying to build those community relationships too, and partnerships, I think can help benefit our schools too, because it takes a team, especially at the high school level. It's a daunting task, like Jill said, sometimes with students who just have not a great end of the stick to deal with. So.
Any other questions with the behavior report? So we'll move on to the student handbook. How this conversation kind of got to here is we've been talking about behaviors, and it really stemmed from whether the teachers felt they had the support to have accountability with the backup of the handbook, so it wasn't always just the teacher. So that's kind of where this all came from. So focusing on behaviors, how we're adjusting the handbook to give the teachers the support. And since you guys are down here,
I was like, we might as well just stay.
go right ahead.
So what we did in this document here is just, I scratched out some notes of what we did as a high school in order to look at this process from our handbook revision process. So it kind of starts out with, and I brought these big sticky notes up, and they've been stuck to a lot of different places, so that's why they're falling and taped or whatever. But we looked at on-time expectations, student dress code, behavior, tobacco, and then just other, where people could comment on. So originally, we had these things up in the staff lounge, and people could write on them. And then we had, May 24th was our PBIS meeting, and we didn't have an official meeting. We asked staff to come into the IMC, and we took those posters out into the IMC and put them on the tables, and had teachers again have an opportunity to write different questions, comments, feedback on there. Then we took a look at that as a administration team with counseling and our behavior strategist, along with our PBIS team, and we looked at just outlining and revising kind of what changes we wanted to make. And I forgot one important part, that number one on the first page, throughout the year, we took notes on different things that we knew that needed to be adjusted, edited, added. And we combined those notes with staff feedback and staff meetings to look at what we could do differently. We outlined some of those on June 7th and June 12th, which was today. We met with counselors, behavior strategists, an alt-ed teacher, and our school psych to meet about our handbook adjustments and just get another set of eyes on it. A lot of staff input came into this, and a lot of people had questions about it, and we made revisions right up until today. And it's probably not done being revised either. So when you get this, these are our notes, like our collective notes on where we're at so far. I know what you have in your board packet is the entire handbook, but what we did with this notes page is we're writing down the adjustments here and then inputting them into that handbook. This is kind of our working doc, and then we give it to our admin assistant, and she is going to upload it in there. So pieces of things are in there, but this is really the document that you want to focus your attention on, handbook changes. So we start off with just a description of the positive acknowledgments that we have in there. That's that first section. And then these little asterisks down here, you'll see as you go through here, it's like first, second, third time something happens. Those we talked about at great length, but we incorporated those are within a calendar year. One of the reasons for that is some kids end the year kind of rough, or begin the year kind of rough, and we just, to be consistent, we just wanted to say, like if it's Matt's going to talk about the vaping piece, vaping, tobacco, nicotine. You'll see it, it's highlighted on the second page there. But that's within a calendar year. So when we look at a certain instance, we'll look back on their referrals that all have dates right by it. There's a list of them just with the titles, and go back a calendar year for that. So I just wanted to explain that. That's what we're looking at when you see those first, second, third.
This is a silly question, but calendar year is in school calendar year or no. January, December?
A calendar year being, if it happened today, it's June 12th. We go back to last year, June 12th.
Okay, thank you.
Then also we have in here a description of a step plan, because you'll see that in a number of different areas that we looked at with our handbook. And we described what a step plan is there. Some of you may be familiar with it, but basically that once you're on a step plan, that student has a very tightened set of consequences as far as attendance that has to do with tardies or unexcused absence or any behavior referral. They can move backwards a step at any time, and it takes them 10 school days to earn a step back. What a step entails is 2 class periods during the day that they then have to complete that classwork online using Canvas to keep up with that course. And it describes it in that that last paragraph before the reflection forms. It describes, that's taken right from the language that we have in the step plan, which again is not saying it's the end all be all, but it's what we have right now that can afford us some workability in certain situations when they get down into multiple occurrences of different things.
How many students would you say were on a step plan this past school year at one time or another?
17 at the end of the year, wasn't it?
I think that's what we were at today.
17 were at the end of the year.
Okay. And they know my concern about step plans is then they're not in the classroom, and you'll never raise student achievement, in my opinion, if a student isn't in school. So I worry about that, and then CESA 9 always has attorneys come to speak. Mike Julka is his name, and so this question was asked because when behaviors are such that everyone is frustrated, I mean, it's kind of a respite for everyone when that student is not in school. But if we had virtual learning and the family agreed, that would be one thing. But to put a student on a step plan without guaranteeing going through like a special ed referral process. You really have to be careful that you're not denying anyone FAPE if there is a disability. We don't have, as Clint said, when I told him that, we don't have the manpower to do that file review on every student who's on a step plan. We just don't. So it's risky. I just want the board to know that. But, and some, Matt, you shared an example last time we had this update of one that was really successful.
Yeah.
You know,
There's some that are very successful, and there's some that are, you're right, it's not successful.
Mm-hmm. So.
What is the alternative, Julie?
Well, that
million-dollar
is the,
question.
exactly, to find something that works. Now we, you know, virtual learning, if we offer that from the get-go to a student who is struggling with behaviors, that might help, but then we still, what we're missing is that position where somebody can be that student's case manager, for lack of a better term. We don't have anyone with time and a schedule to do that, so that's tough. But
And a step plan is implemented after all other interventions and supports have been tried and unsuccessful. So that's your, kind of your last resort unless there's a more serious incident, correct?
Well, I mean, I can talk about the tobacco one. So if you flip the page, so.
It's in yellow.
Yep. So last year we revised, and this is revised even from this year, last year we revised our tobacco citations, or our tobacco policy, 1, 2, third offense, and then repeated offense. And we put in specific things as far as like the first offense was half day in-school suspension, second day was 1 day in-school suspension. The third offense, which has changed now, was 2 day in-school suspension. And then this year's policy, first offense, they had a police citation. Second offense, they had, every time they were caught or in possession, they had a police citation. So it was pretty cut and dry. We didn't really leave any wiggle room. And the reason we did that is because in the years past, we were always like, well, we'll give this kid a break. Well, maybe we'll, okay, yes, citation, no. And it became very frustrating for us. It became very frustrating for kids, knowing that, and kids talk. I mean, kids are very smart at the high school. They talk to numerous kids. And so we just laid it out for families. And every time I had a conversation with a family, I just referred back to our policy. I never had one family come back and say, why are you doing this? Like, they knew it, they expected it, and this is just what it was. So it really cleaned things up in our conversations, and it made it easier for us to determine whether or not to, or what to do in that situation. So,
and that's, just to add on there, Matt, that's one of the things that was we discussed as an admin team, as a PBIS team, with the counselors and with staff in general, but that was put in there by somebody that just crossed out the word may and said will. So if you've got it, that's it. Doesn't matter if you're holding on to it for a friend. It doesn't matter any of those things. If you have it.
So question, so when you talk about the citation, do you have the dollar amount listed?
We don't.
I think we should.
Because if we change it at any time, we can't, and it's not an easy process to change it. So it's not like I can just go to the court system and say, hey, I want it at $50. That's not how it works. It's a lengthy process, and that process could happen at the beginning of the school year, end of the school year, middle of the school year. Not saying we have to follow that, but it's not as easy as just going and changing the dollar amount. So
what is the dollar amount?
It's $25 for the first offense.
And then
50%.
And how often does it change?
It's nothing.
It hasn't changed for, well, since I've been in this position, so.
Yeah. So I think it needs to hurt a little more.
Yeah.
So I've talked to Courtney, who's our juvenile attorney, and she is looking into that, but again, it's happening. It's just, it's a process, and it just doesn't happen overnight. So we left it open to have discretion if it does change.
Okay.
We can always, if we put a dollar amount, we tie our hands.
So it's whatever the court system deems.
Correct.
Okay, so
maybe we should put that in there. The court system determines or deems what is the citation.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
So
Yeah.
that way, when it changes, it's not like the
Yeah.
administration here is changing it,
Yep.
it's the court systems that's changing it.
Yeah, and I've never had a parent come back to me and say, I can't believe you said that when I say police citation, they just ask me what it is and I tell them, and I've never had anyone argue with me what the dollar amount is.
First offense citation wouldn't require court, would it?
Yep.
It does.
Mandatory court appearance.
So they do have to go, never mind.
Yep.
And so that doesn't go through our liaison officer, right?
Yes.
It does.
Yep.
So he will, going forward, every single time.
He writes the citation.
Okay.
That's the way we operated this year.
Okay. Okay, good.
I know I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but is there other citations for other behaviors?
There is, but this is the only specific one that's very cut and dry. We'll go over like, if there's a physical fight, there's a police referral, so it's not a citation, it's an actual referral, if it's deemed a physical altercation. But this one, as far as like first, second, third offense, is really clear cut and dry and laid out.
I have a question.
Yep.
Why is it not for the alcohol, THC, CBD, and other drugs? We just have a police referral
So.
for the first and second.
Yep, so anytime there's a, alcohol or drugs, it's an
Yeah.
automatic police referral, which means it's sent over to juvenile justice, and then they go through, determine the situation, and determine whether that person's on like probation or they're getting used to citation. It's kind of in the court system, and that's what we've always done. So the first offense, we've always done 3-day out of school suspension for that. Second offense, we really don't have a,
But both are illegal actions for minors.
yeah, I understand, yep.
So I don't understand why one goes to the juvenile system for
For
referral.
tobacco,
Or, and gets fined right away versus the alcohol and THC and CBD.
So the referral is actually much more strict than a citation.
Yeah.
Very much more strict. They could be put on supervision for 6 months, meaning they're wearing an ankle bracelet, or they're under the supervision of Kim or Craig or something like that. So it's much more strict than a citation. You don't want a referral.
And we don't get to decide
Correct.
that.
Okay, that was what I was gonna say too.
Yep.
It's
Okay.
not just school, it's the collaboration with
Yeah,
juvenile
okay.
justice as well. Same with truancy. They no longer accept truancy referrals. They
Okay.
used to, but they don't anymore, so that's out of our hands. So you could argue that for truancy too. But the reason is that JJ doesn't have to accept those referrals, and they're not going to, because they don't have the manpower.
What is the connection between the tobacco nicotine device consequences and a cell phone suspension?
Yep. So what we did is, this is new, so we didn't have any type of cell phone suspension in there, and we didn't have anything with Nurse Jansen. So we've dabbled in a whole variety of different things to try to combat tobacco use. We've had the community health department come in a couple years ago and run different sessions during Pride Time. Mr. Sigmund tried Stanford University, an online platform, to try to combat that. We really haven't found anything that's super successful and consistent to combat that. So we've dabbled in a whole bunch of things. I've talked to some different districts. Unfortunately, Nurse Jansen's our nurse for the entire district, which is very tough. But she is on board to help combat this thing, and she's working with the health department right now to try to get something consistent in. So they would be in a group after the second offense. So if they had the second offense in the first quarter, they would be placed in that group. In the second quarter, it'd run 6 weeks, and they would be every Wednesday to go through some restorative learning on tobacco and tobacco use. So that's one restorative thing that we're trying to put in place to help combat that. So it's not just punitive, it's a restorative piece too that they'd have to take, but it would be required. And then the cell phone piece is tied because many times the cell phone is the gateway to connect kids to tobacco use. I'll give you for an instance, one time the device was passed around 6 times, and it started from 1 device to 2 devices to 3 devices, and next thing you know there were 6 kids that had passed this device around in a matter of a day. And I was playing catch up with trying to track down where it was, and finally I did catch up to it. If they didn't have the cell phones, they would have never been contacting each other, because I confiscated all the cell phones. I called the parents, we looked through their information, and sure enough, They were texting each other, Mr. Runk's gonna come and get you, pass it now. Mr. Runk's gonna come and get you, pass it now. And so we put the 5-day, the 5-day cell phone to help combat. One, cell phones, talking to many parents, you know, they like us to deal with it, and not so much they don't want to be the bad guy. But it helps the traveling of those devices if they don't have a cell phone.
So when they arrive each day, they'd have to turn
Yep.
their phone over to you,
Correct.
not kept overnight?
Kept overnight.
Because that's personal property, I
Yep.
don't think you can do that either.
Technically, no. If the parent would want it, or the guardian would want it, they could get it. However, we've had a lot of support with keeping it overnight.
If the
in
parent
past.
supports it, you are home
Yep,
free.
yep, correct,
Yep.
but we cannot.
Do you get that in writing?
What's that?
If the parents support that the phone is kept here overnight? I
It's-
would.
I usually just call and then I document in our PLP, which is our behavior, or not our behavior system, but our documenting system, and I just document that conversation I've had with that parent or guardian in our documentation. But yes, we cannot technically keep it. Technically, I can't take it either. Officer Schilling can't even technically take it. But, you know, 99% of the time when you call home, they're supportive in their child's education
Or we
and the
can
cell
become
phone is.
like the middle school, cell phone free.
And that's what we're gonna do
Yeah,
with
I
the
thought that there's
8 and
They're
9.
still there.
cell phones. And if there would
So-
be a rule, no cell phones at all at school for kids, that'd be
Yeah,
great.
it would be
I'm
great.
not sure how we can make that happen, but.
But wasn't that the
Good, that'd be
intent
great.
at one time, was
It
no
was.
cell phones at all, ever? Like
Yeah.
in the locker, they can stay, but they're not supposed to have cell phones.
We
And
tried at
that's,
the high school too, and it was very,
that's kind of gone by the wayside.
yeah, it was very tough to.
This seems like a lot of chasing
Well, there's,
cell phones, you know, like the kid drops it off in the morning, then they want to use it
Well,
on
for-
lunch hour, and then they go back after school and they want to get it, and now mom picked it up, or, I don't know, it just seems like a lot of,
Yeah. And it's probably not gonna go away, and I'm not here to discuss.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The nuances of that,
Right.
we'll take care of that. But the reason why I shared the tobacco one is because it's been very cut and clear with how we handle that situation, and it's helped be very clear with families and students, and has saved us a lot of if, ands, or buts. And I've had a lot of these conversations with students and families, and I really haven't had one that came back negative, because it's very laid out in our policy. So we took that policy, and I know it's not the same for every other incident, and they're different, but we tried to mirror some of those same things in other areas. With also having some type of restorative piece included in some of those areas. So.
Takes out the questions. Always gray area, but.
The reason why we wanted to move to some more descriptive language in there is because of the I'm going to say success at dealing with some of the tobacco, nicotine, vaping stuff last year, because it was right there, like Matt said.
I think that would be with any discipline issue.
When it was too gray,
Yeah.
it was, well, you're not really gonna, are you?
Right.
Clint, what I
Exactly.
like about the descriptive language is, this is what is in the handbook, so whenever a parent comes and wants to say, why is this happening, or a student, you can take them to the handbook, and this is what the handbook says, these are the consequences, both punitive and restorative consequences of what you've just done. That takes the onus off of you guys and Anita, and puts the onus on the kids to be responsible for what they've done. And it's in writing, it's in black and white.
And
So
when they
I
read
like
it,
the descriptive language.
Then they're like,
Yep.
oh, yeah, I got it.
So talking about attendance, we also put in there, you see we call it groups, we don't call it like a restorative circle, it's a group. And we're looking to run a group around attendance too, once they hit the 18 tardies. So it'd be a group specifically during prime time, focused on attendance, reasons why, how can we combat, how can we help you? Just a more systematic way than, kind of like Jill said, we're all kind of running around trying to, maybe sometimes we're doing more work, when we can do less work if we have it in a system setup. So that was just another restorative piece to try to help combat the attendance piece that we want to get going too.
And
Just
that's
another, yep.
another reason why I wanted to highlight the process that we took, because our counselors have had their eyes on this several times, and just have had their input on that, and we've talked about those groups several times.
When you talk about the difference between restorative, the group and the restorative circle, I guess first, what's the difference between that? And then second is, under physical aggression, fight with intent to harm, the first offense, you talk about social skill pride time. I'm not sure what that is. And then you offer restorative circle. And that's for the first offense, the second offense. And then the third offense, then they come to the board for expulsion. So like, what is this restorative circle? Is this where they're getting together with their victims?
So the social skill pride time is required.
Okay.
Because they're going to go to that group, period.
The social skill group.
Yep.
Okay.
The restorative circle, when you're trained in restorative circles, one of the components of that is that it shouldn't be, you need to do this. It's not a requirement of that. So that's why it says offer of a restorative circle with students and possibly their families. Because some people don't want to take any part in that. But we still wanted them to get some social skill learning, so that's why that social skill pride time group required is in there.
A restorative circle is us sitting around this table like this and asking specific questions to figure out what happened and how do we move forward.
Who was affected by
Who would
it?
be invited to the table? That's what you're asking, Angie?
Yeah.
And a group is different. A group is like you're going to learn about how you can better yourself in this specific area.
Okay, so the circle, am I understanding this correctly? The circle is student A has bullied and threatened student B, and so a restorative circle would be bringing both those students together and possibly the families together to talk about what happened?
Correct. And a group is more learning around how to be a better person in a certain area, defiance, disrespect, whatever it might be. It's not directly tied to a specific incident.
If I'm getting bullied and threatened, I don't want to go sit and have him or her justify what they want to do to me.
That's why it's offered, it's not required.
Yeah, I just.
And for severe situations, I don't see that as the offering either. It's more the things that could be discussed, not if there's.
Well, it's under physical aggression.
Because a lot of
intent
times
to harm.
the kids do want to talk to them.
Okay.
They're like, yeah, I do, but I'm not doing it by myself.
Okay.
So that's a safe place.
Yeah.
Okay.
Honestly, I would say
Interesting.
95% of them
do
go very well and do.
Okay.
Not in the
Interesting.
specific moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
At our level though too, like a lot of times we will ask the parent too first, because sometimes the parent's not ready for it either, and then we have that conversation. It'll be, I'm gonna guess that you guys sometimes talk to the parents too, but at our level, we try to communicate with, if it's an intense situation, a lot of times it can be a quick repair, but if it's something intense, we do communicate with the families too, and sometimes the family's like, nope, not yet, we're not ready for this conversation, and we want to talk with our child first a little bit more, but it's always agreed upon.
Yep. And good point, usually it doesn't happen that day. It's usually 2 to 3 days afterwards.
Okay.
So our goal is to have this inputted so that the Policy and Personnel Committee next Monday will have this in a more solidified form.
Okay.
And we'll go from
The no pass list is at 18 tardies for attendance?
No pass list is at 18.
That's a lot of tardies.
When Jill asked that question about calendar year, I was thinking, the other levels you look for each school year, don't you? Like if you're checking how many times a student was tardy, it's in that.
Yes, well, and we do it by semester too.
Yeah.
Quarter.
Yep.
We actually go to quarter.
Quarter for tardies, we do quarter.
So do we.
Okay,
The
so where is the, what would you be looking at calendar year for, like?
Physical aggression, vaping, drugs, alcohol.
That's so like
Repeated
school
refusal,
year, right?
neglect.
No, it would go back to the previous school year.
Yeah, when do they get a fresh start? But like the athletic code of conduct, that carries with them from 9th grade through 12th grade, right?
Correct. So like for instance, one year we had a bunch of kids that were vaping at the end of the school day, on the last day of school. And then the kid got in trouble the first week of school, and he got in trouble the second week of school, and then like a month later. So we looked back and said, yes, it was last year, but if you look at the grand scheme of things, you've been caught 5 times in a matter of a month and a half. And so that's why we, that's just one instance on why we looked at the calendar year. Because it's really not fair for a kid to get into a fight at the end of the school day on the last day of school and be like, well, fresh start.
Doesn't matter. Right.
Doesn't matter. And we just wanted to ensure that. Thank you.
So a student can get 17 tardies.
Put them in summer school.
17 tardies,
In third quarter,
and they would have had,
and it would start over in fourth quarter then at 1 again?
Starts over every quarter.
So do you think 18 tardies is pretty lenient for a no-pass list?
yeah.
I feel like that's not doing much to mitigate the issue.
Well, you can get 7 in a day.
You could get.
7 in
you
a
could
day
get
times
9.
Mr.
9
Moran
in a
chasing
day.
that student
Yep.
5 out of the 7 with 2 other staff members. I mean, so like, you can get 7 in a day, but
You could get 9
that's
in a
a,
day.
that's a lot of staff time and documentation that you shouldn't have. I mean, really ideally, you should, if there's tardies, it should be 1 or 2 classes in a day or at a targeted time, or, and maybe it's sporadic throughout the day, but I don't know, I think 18 is
It's really
giving
hard
a free pass
yeah.
to say,
Yeah.
And to monitor and
I'm not
no-pass
negating
list too.
the significant amount of time you've put into that.
The monitoring of it is intense with how it's written out now. I mean, there's getting kids to go to lunch detention and making sure that they do. We didn't address in here, I don't think we addressed in here if they didn't go to lunch detention.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think that needs to be in
They
there.
can't graduate. That's in there.
That's illegal
eventually.
though. You can't, if they met graduation requirements, you can't deny them.
You can't walk.
But, yeah, walking.
Yeah, so if they don't go to the lunch detention, it's a, then what? Because I know we have students that just, they don't care, they just don't show up. So a lot of good that did.
And usually we find them, but
And then what?
we walk them there.
Okay.
And if they don't go, we send them home.
Okay.
And it would be written up and that would count.
But again, that's your time, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, we try to be realistic on what we can post, overall, because we want to be consistent. If we know if we can't be consistent and we can't do it, it's not going to be
Doesn't work.
feasible and it won't work no matter what we put in place. And we do want kids in the school like Dr. Spriggs said, we're not in the business of kicking kids out of school. That's not our intent here. And so we want to be mindful that we have some students who need a lot of support, but we also want to look at that accountability piece and talking to many people and our staff and our groups that we met with for hours upon the last days, basically the whole day and some other days, we felt this was a good starting point. And maybe it changes next year, but
I don't know if that was appropriate, but I know we're kind of running late, but I just want to mention that in the student handbook, when we talk about the dress code, because I was looking at the policies up there, and it says dress code, no sports bras. And currently how it says is that clothing has to be clean, appropriate, attire covering the chest, buttocks, and undergarments. That's not in this one.
It's just on under other considerations.
Yeah.
We have cheating, reassessment policy, theft, and dress code.
Yeah, like, we should not be having students show up in tube tops. I'm sorry, we just should not.
Rhinelander has a very similar dress code to us. Northland Pines does not. They're very descriptive with belly shirts.
Nope.
Or you
I
can't
think that's what
be
I
showing
need.
your belly. I just sent out an email to the GNC and asked them and those are the principals that have responded so far. I'm sure more will.
Yeah, I think we need to be more specific, and I think, I mean, because if it gets, if it's bad enough, we'll go to uniforms.
Managing that
Mm-hmm.
is just very difficult.
Right.
And we would have to be we would have to make sure it's enforceable, whatever we have.
Mm-hmm.
And that it's that clear language. Because there's a lot
Mm-hmm.
of midriffs
Right, I know, I've been here.
around.
Yeah.
But I hear conversations in the community from community members.
Yeah,
What are
that
they
too.
allowing those kids to wear to school now?
Yeah.
School bus drivers. I said, wow. One school bus driver caught me one day in Walmart whenever I was dropping off other riders for our company. Is there anything you do about the dress code? And I says, well, yeah, I've seen it from a distance. He said, you ought to see it up close for what the students wear on the buses. But again, I know it's a hard thing to police, so to speak. You know, what are the punitive things? What is the restorative practice that we need to do? But when I look up there, those are what staff members wrote.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, when I see, I'm trying to read the green. I was told by admin that number 3,
No, that as long as it covers.
as long as it covers
It's not a
undergarments.
And this is very different.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's what it's saying up there.
So I would suggest that between now and next Monday that your admin team comes together with a more close, stricter policy. I mean, clean, appropriate attire covering the chest, buttocks, and undergarments. I mean, you got all the midriff shirts that are out there. Apparently, some girls are wearing sports bras only to school.
On tube tops. I mean,
Or
just
tube tops.
Tube tops, just nothing there.
I mean, back in my day, if you wore that to school, you were sent home.
Yeah.
To change and brought back.
And I think that's what the board will ultimately have to decide is the consequence, you know.
The language we have currently in our handbook, it's in the board docs too.
Page 27.
Students who violate foregoing rules will not be admitted to class and may be suspended from school.
But that's the problem, is that that's not happening. So,
Right.
like, to have a rule and order and then not enforce it
Well,
is what-
it's, our dress code is also written to cover our undergarments, buttocks, chest, so it's not talking about midriff.
And this is the first year that we had this
Correct.
code.
Because of the managerial part. It's like, what are we going to tackle? What are we going to spend our time on?
Well, couldn't a teacher dress code a student and then either send them to the office or something and then call home? Do you want to bring your child a shirt? Do you want to bring, you know, whatever is appropriate? Otherwise, they need to go home. I think it might be tough probably for like maybe the first couple of weeks, but after that, I think the kids would get a clear message, as well as the parents.
Let me also ask, how did it go with the change of the hoodies and hats this year? Because honestly, I've not heard any negative about the hoodies and the hats being
I haven't
worn
either.
in school.
It's still up to that.
Classroom teacher?
Yep, it's up to the classroom teacher, and some teachers don't allow them.
Okay.
But they're owning working through that, because we will not take that on. We'll support them in that process.
Right.
But we're not gonna just take it and deal with it.
Why are we, like, it does, to me, that doesn't make sense, because then you're not consistent. You know, it should be consistent
Same thing with
across the
cell
board.
phones
Yeah,
right now.
yeah,
No.
exactly.
Hats and hoods, that you guys have tackled that at the middle school, correct? Heather?
was that?
Hats and hoods, you guys had a focus on that this year, didn't you?
Somewhat, with like 7th grade. It's different for a 4th grader. They're got their winter jackets on and their hoods on because they're freezing, you know, so 7th grade came together as a team and talked through it. And 6th grade is like, should we draw attention to it? And I'm like, do you guys have any big concerns or are you guys okay? But 7th grade, And here's how it went. We think it started end of third quarter. We had everybody come together, 7th grade, and then all of a sudden everybody's tight for about a week or two, and then everybody starts loosening up again, and then it pits one teacher after the other, and we can't deal with all that all the time. You know, that's what they were kind of getting at too. So, I don't know. There's nothing perfect.
I do think that the dress code should be a district-wide for all. So that way, they're teaching in the elementaries what the dress code is about. You're reinforcing, and you're reinforcing. But the dress code should also pertain to staff too, because, you know, I don't know if there's any problems with staff members not following or adhering to dress issues. I don't know.
Not aware of any. Do we have a dress code for staff?
I'm thinking
Just
back.
professional?
Just
Yeah.
conversation.
Yeah.
Just professional, I
They wear
think.
jeans all the time. Yeah, I don't
Well, it could also be that way for cell phones.
Yeah.
Yeah, it should be.
Absolutely.
It should be.
Because I've told staff this, and I've told parents this, and I am in 100% support of not having cell phones in the classroom. But the managerial part, again, where do we want to spend our time? If we do that, we're going to have a battle on our hands.
Will it be an all-time battle, or like Angie said, will it be a couple of weeks? And then,
Honestly,
we don't know.
it was
What was it like for the middle school
constant
when you
when
went
we
to
did it.
no cell phone policy?
It was constant.
Well,
I mean, they still,
they wear
Yeah.
hoodies with pockets in front. I mean,
Yeah,
we're
yeah.
not gonna tackle them down and get their cell phones out of them.
yeah, yeah.
But if they don't have them out.
too. Like, it's obvious, that where there's a will, there's a way, and there's many
Right.
parents that are like, my kid will have a cell phone on them when they're in this school.
Well, and then there's the other, I mean,
Not a lot, but some.
Yeah.
you know, if there was consistency among classrooms, that cell phones were not allowed to even be out. So if they have, you know, if they have it on them, you don't have it out, period.
And that's
You
what
do know,
it's
but
written
you're
in
not
Nathan
bringing it
and I.
out, you're not gonna make a big deal about it, because there's other fish to fry.
Right, yeah,
Bingo.
I get that,
Yeah,
yeah.
so I have been very vocal. I've had conversations with Clint about the dress code. We are preparing students for college and career readiness.
Yep.
I firmly feel as though we should have an enforced dress code that's appropriate and respectful. And it was touched on by 2 different levels tonight. The manpower to oversee that, and what's our best bang for our buck really is what I look at. So is tackling the dress code, which is like a passion of mine. I'd love to see it tightened up. But that does not seem like it should be a priority for our district. I would love to tackle cell phones and being strict on that, and I think that needs to be district-wide because it was touched on at 2 different levels as well with cell phones and hats and hoods. But there's endless different examples where it pins staff and it creates stress and frustration among staff because this staff didn't allow the hat, but this staff did allow the hat, and that staff did allow the crop top, but this one, so you, as a district and as a board, we have to decide where are we gonna place our energy, because then we can go back to the highlighted part that Mr. Bronk spoke about, where it was very clear and consistent, and it takes away a bulk of the argumentative conversations to say this is our policy and this is our why. So from my perspective, I would appreciate looking at something that's going to impact student achievement first, and dress code second, even though it's really hard for me to say that out loud.
Well, I think, and if we let parents and the students know that, I mean, if there continues to be a huge issue with, you know, with kids wearing stuff that they're not supposed to, where, I mean, that, you know, we as a board would be looking at possibly going, I mean, because we have every right to look at going to uniforms. So.
I remember when my daughter was graduate here in 2018, went to prom, and there was a young lady that had part of her midriff showing, and she was asked to go home and change. I was here and saw that. But now,
yeah,
you can have from your.
And I understand that there's a lot to manage, but I think that we send a message also by putting rules in place and not enforcing them.
And that's
Right
why
now.
that's why it's written the way it's written right now.
So then we be a little bit more precise with the dress code, and you find the manpower to figure out how to do it.
I really think that it would maybe be a couple of weeks, and then after that, the kids will, get it, the parents will get it. Might have one or, some outliers, but I think the majority would get it.
And if it's district-wide, again, it
Yeah.
starts with the elementary, flows into the middle school, into the high school.
Yeah.
It would be nice if it tied into district-wide goals and then building goals, and that way we wouldn't have this discussions more, like on different areas of the handbook. We could simply say, what's our district goal? All right, Clint, what are your building goals? Heather, elementary, and then we can say, well, here, it ties into this, yes, no. If it does, now we have the discussion further. If it doesn't, then we set it off to the side. It doesn't mean it's not important, but I just feel like we are so all over the place. They're all relevant and important. It's hard to narrow where our focus is, because then I go to what is it like in the day-to-day, and Clint and Heather are responsible for managing their staff, and we just talked about truancy and 18 tardies before you get a no pass list, which is monitored by all the staff. So now you have X amount of students on a no pass list that they're checking all the time. Plus you talked about reporting fatigue and documentation that we're asking of, and it's like, I'm overwhelmed thinking about all that admin have to manage at each building, and then what all the staff have to follow through on and what's being managed. So I guess at the end, to wrap up where I started, it just narrow down what is our focus and what do we want to tackle. So that way our buildings know, and then the staff know that the admin's getting the directive from the board or from the superintendent, but I feel like it needs to be clear, and I don't know that it is entirely right now. But the handbook is a way in which we're getting to that.
Mr. Pyatt, it's 9 o'clock, and we have 2 more schools. Do you want to put elementary and middle school into July?
We can. I just feel bad that our administrators are here for all of this tonight. I felt like that our high school was going to take more time than middle school and the elementary. Not that they have more problems, but there's more issues here because you're dealing with older kids that are trying to become independent. Yeah. I would take a look at your committee and what they would say.
Aren't these are all going to the policy committee next
They are
Monday
going to the policy
too, right?
committee, yes.
Yeah.
So we could start at the policy committee with the elementary and then the middle school next Monday night as well. Are there any other questions for the high school? Do we want to put on the high school anything else, like his questions in the back? Theft, dress code, the cheating?
And I know it's a lot to look through right now, so please take a look at that and send me feedback, and I can communicate that.
And you have the attachments for the middle school and the elementaries as well.
Yep.
If there's a way that between the next couple of days that we could see what the changes were, highlighted or something, I don't know if Mary Kay can look at there, because that's the question I asked Clint when I looked at all of the document of the high school, what were the changes? And that's where this came from. Because he wanted to just specify what the changes are. So what were the changes in the middle school? What were the changes in elementary or?
I would say there's really no changes, because we didn't, what we changed was we got rid of all the policies that we typed out, and they're just links now.
Like them, and
So
what we wanted.
This is cleaned up.
Yeah.
We didn't change
And the
anything.
3 levels align now where they did not before. So they'll have the same order.
Yeah.
The parts that are district-wide will read the same, but like each principal's welcome message will be individual.
Okay.
So, and that, it was much harder than we thought it would be to align everything. Amy was instrumental in that by creating a template, and then it took a lot. So they're more aligned than they weren't at all before.
You can tell they are very easy to read and to follow, because I went from one right to the other. And
Good,
it was like
I'm
boom,
glad.
boom, boom.
It flows.
Yeah,
That's the first thing that came to my mind was, this is all flowing together, whenever I first looked at this.
Good.
Is there anything, yes, because we didn't ask elementary.
So the elementary, the one that's uploaded is the elementary draft. Tom and I both have North and East's handbooks shared with Mary Kay. Rachel did not update it, and it's because she is waiting for the new principal to update, like the principal, letter from the principal and such. So hers really is updated for what she can update, and that's why we just shared with you the elementary template. And it does have elementary specifics, but then the, drop-off pickup in each of our buildings is different. So Mary Kay does have, the specifics.
Jill and Bobby, did you have many questions for elementary and middle school?
No, I did not. I just feel like it's worth the continued conversation on Monday, the 19th, right? Yeah.
Jill, did you have any questions?
Just happy to hear middle school and high school would be supportive of looking at no cell phones in the buildings.
Well, I have questions.
Do you have problems with elementary
I didn't look over the docs before.
No? No? Okay.
It starts when they get to the middle school.
Fourth
Sometimes
grade.
everybody,
You can
the parents and the families feel they have to have a cell phone.
Do it.
It's crazy.
It's a safety issue.
Sure, you pass your question.
Yeah,
Everybody else has them, no, they don't.
We do have some.
We all fell into that as parents, I did too.
Yep.
We do have some students at the elementary that do have cell phones, but they either keep it in their cubby, give it to
Not
the
a problem.
teacher, give it to the office, and then they get it at the end. It's not like we collect them, it's, a parent or student choice. I had two very consistent that came to the office, and that was parents and student choice.
We have a lot of peer help in that too.
Okay.
So-and-so has a cell
Oh.
We got that with vapes.
We did have one young lady that when she got too stressed, she would come up to me and give me her cell phone.
Okay.
Interesting.
Knew this.
She's like, take this till the end of the day.
Yeah.
And sometimes it was at 8:30 in the morning.
Good for her.
Oh,
It
yeah.
adds a lot.
It does.
Yeah.
Videotaping and, I mean, there's planned, they look at TikTok, they don't come up with these ideas, they get these ideas, and they bring them to school, and it's just gonna get worse and worse.
Yep.
I mean, but you also wanna respect people that are using it correctly too.
Right.
So since I was the only one who had a couple questions, can I just do them so then we're?
Yes.
Okay, then we can just be done. So for both the elementary and the middle school, under the discipline heading, you click on discipline and it goes right to suspension and expulsion. As far as, you click the link to discipline, you click on it and it takes us to the policy of suspension and expulsion. And in the high school one, there's some in between, this could be some possible consequences. And I'm thinking that maybe in the elementary and the middle school, it would be nice to just have something listed as an in-between possible discipline so that parents know what could possibly happen. So it gives that teacher that backbone and it takes away those questions. Just a thought.
Okay.
Did you have a page number that was on?
It's in the references, or in the
Or just
resources.
the policy one? Okay, gotcha.
Right, and it just takes you right to that versus, okay. And then in the middle school one, it says in there, the cell phone policy, this is a cell phone zone, and then the next paragraph completely contradicts that. Because it says that you can use them in the lunch and in between passing. So if you look on page, Annual Middle School is a cell phone free zone during the school day.
What page are you on?
I'm on page 21. Please read expectations, and then it says personal communication device before and after school, during their lunch break, and in between classes, as long as they don't create a distraction. So either it is or it's not, so it's kind of contradictory. And then the school closure in the elementary says one thing, and in middle school it says something else too. I just made a quick note.
Is it about remote learning?
Yeah, so in one of them it says there won't be any, and in the other one says there will be.
Yeah, we just gotta change that part out.
Elementary won't be, I bet.
Yeah.
Right,
Well-
that they'll send home a folder, but then,
Yes.
Yeah.
but it doesn't, it says,
Elementary is not sending devices home, but they could send learning opportunities on Dojo or in a folder. And then middle school is split too. Who will take a Chromebook home if there's enough notice? But we'll look at that.
I know what
one versus the other.
I know what you're saying, because I've
Kristen, can I ask you where you're referencing the remote learning?
Yeah, I'm looking for
Is
the
it in, like,
elementary
two
one,
different
sorry.
sections?
Yes.
Yep.
Well,
So in
we're
the elementary, there's
looking,
one under attendance procedures,
So this is where we
and it talks about inclement weather, remote. Says packets will be sent home,
Right.
and then down further.
I should have put the page, I'm sorry.
Technology.
remember I told you to update this.
Do packets get sent home?
Yeah, we actually keep learning material in their Wednesday or whatever, their take-home folder. So it's always there, ready, whenever there's inclement weather.
Maybe I just imagined it.
it shows that it's under the inclement weather statement, so it would be on page 10. It should be of all of them really, because that's the district part.
Maybe I made it up, so I'm sorry.
No, I know what you're talking about, but
I'll-
when I referenced it, it
I'll
wasn't in
relook
the
and then
handbook.
send it to you.
It's page
And then the
8.
last thing is, I find it interesting that in the both those handbooks, we have clear set bus expectations. Like, it is clear what is expected on the bus, and I'm wondering if we should have classroom expectations. And I know each classroom is different, but some things are the same classroom to classroom, and I would love to think that it's common sense, but common sense is not so common.
Well, I'm gonna be honest with you, the bus expectations look clear on paper, but they're not clear.
Depending on
But
the
it-
driver.
But there's something there. There is some,
And we have, well, we could put up a blanket classroom statement thing, but we also take pride in having our students a part of what they want their classroom to look like. And that's part of responsive classroom. I mean, teachers guide the kids on what that looks like, so we can give a basic blanket kind of statement for what a classroom we want it to look like. But just keep in mind that in the classroom, it's their community, and they want to help set that together. The teachers do come in with some parameters in their head, but it's still that buy-in.
so even if it is like classroom expectations will be set by, you know what, it's interesting to me though that it's clear, at least we're addressing those bus expectations, but then we don't address the classroom expectations. It was just something that I observed. And it came off to me as like, oh, so we're.
Well, I think you made a good point too, like Matt, they shared what the high school did, and I'm like, we weren't ready to like dig that deep into all the consequences. I'm gonna be honest with you, we had at one time with the middle school a demerit system. And you had this demerit, you're on level 2, you had this, didn't matter what it was. This is where you were, it was clear, it was cut, it was teachers writing out the ticket left and right, no conversations happening. There's some definite positive things of doing it that way. There has to be a balance. We didn't know that that's really where we were supposed to go. So that's why I didn't want to spend too much time reviewing it. But we do have a list of consequences and we can figure that out. It looks different for a 4th grader than a 7th grader. So that's why there's a lot of that could fit into a 6th and 7th grade, some of the things that are within the high school realm, but we just didn't dig too deep into that yet, because we just didn't really know what it was going to look like coming from the top and coming down, so we didn't want to work too crazy hard on it. But I like the idea we wrote down, blanket statement around classroom expectations. We easily can add consequences. I think
Like our resolutions, kind of like our meeting we had today.
Just so. Okay. That's all I had.
Yeah.
Thanks. Anybody else have anything? Alrighty. Carry on.
And then we're presenting these again when?
Monday.
I didn't know we were supposed to be here next Monday.
What I was going to say, Bobby, is we'll have to be really intentional about the order of that agenda, because there's so many things on it.
I was just gonna tell her the same thing, you gotta meet that meeting go?
Is there a way that, when's the next policy meeting? In July?
July.
I mean, is there a way that there's some time for that, or does everybody want to get this done right away? I'm not really sure.
Well, when's your deadline for going to print?
Are we printing these?
These will be on the
website.
website.
Is it, we're printing them, we're sending our stuff.
Then maybe we
Yeah.
should,
We
because I'd
haven't-
like to read them
Yes.
Okay.
thoroughly.
Heather.
So
That's,
the kids are not gonna get planners with this information in it?
Not,
Well,
we
they
used to.
We send our, we're gonna do a shortened version of this, whatever gets approved, to make sure that it gets into the mailing with our students. But then I thought the conversation was to make sure it was online. And we're not doing a planner anymore at the middle school, and
You're not.
and the high school's not putting anything, this isn't going in the planner because we already missed that date. right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we missed that a long time ago.
So printing is gonna
Back
be
in
from the
April, isn't
Xerox
it?
machine.
Yeah, April is the date for the planner.
Okay. That's what I thought it was, in spring.
Yep.
So what I'm hearing is that it can be pushed then, to provide more time?
Yeah,
Push
Yeah.
it to the July policy meeting.
Okay.
Julie, do you have that date? Is it
Um,
the first Monday?
What's
Well,
the policy?
Are you okay with that?
Oh, it's
They
Thursday.
changed, didn't they? Yeah.
It will be
They-
No, but
Thursday.
it would be
July.
your
July
committee sending
third.
the
The
policy
6th,
for
maybe?
approval.
Let me look.
I think it would be July 6th.
Oh, we have to do it.
July 6th is a curriculum and pupil.
More time better.
We did put a QR code in our planner
There
that's
is a
linking to this.
physical discussion.
Curriculum and
Like
pupil
smart
services, July
position for
6th.
Okay.
So that's three
Well,
items right now.
So Heather, it would help at your level to make those changes and not feel rushed to push to July.
Yeah.
Clint, how do you feel about it? Would that be beneficial on your end?
Yeah, that would be.
Donna?
I'm sorry. July 6th? Is that by you?
Actually, July 10th.
will be
July 10th is policy.
Yeah, it'll be.
July 10th?
Oh, not
July-
pupil services
July-
policy.
July 10th.
Got it.
July
Why?
10th. July
Ten-
10th.
Why is it on Thursday?
4:30.
Or Tuesday?
July 4th?
Or Wednesday?
Yep.
So yeah, why is it on
July 10th, 4:30.
Thursday?
So then,
Okay.
can we
I thought it was-
upload,
It has something to do with July 4th.
if they make changes, like based on Kristen's feedback and other things, so we can revise and upload that? We don't have to keep tonight's, correct?
No, just upload the new
Okay.
revisions. yeah.
Okay, because that'll be streamlined.
Yeah,
And-
and maybe if you could email out if or when that happens, I don't know. I don't want
Yeah,
it to
but
be like
it's uploaded,
bombarded
yeah.
with, but like
If it's ready early?
significant revisions from this conversation. Might be helpful to send an email with just that revision,
Mhm.
so then we don't have to scroll through and find it all, because that way then it can just go to policy, and we can review those revisions from this point to policy, and then it would be good to go in discussion, right? At that point, that's what I would see.
So you're just gonna send the revisions to us?
Well, the handbook, but,
You're gonna highlight what was changed? Is that what you're saying?
yeah, I'm rethinking it now.
Yeah, if you were gonna type it up in a revisions document, then why not just put it in the handbook, so you're not
Same
typing it there
difference.
and then
Yeah.
typing it there.
I'm just saying
And then just
notification of where to
highlight the
look and what to,
changes,
yeah.
Highlight the changes.
You know what I
Highlight the
mean?
changes, right, is all I'm
Yeah.
saying.
Okay.
Then we can find it quickly.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's a lot to change by next Monday anyways, so
Yeah.
July 10th works better, I think, for
Okay.
everybody.
So for clarification, we're uploading or sharing the handbook, where you'd like us to highlight any changes from today in the handbook.
Yes.
Right?
Get that?
You should be sitting up here, Donna.
You got it.
Okay.
Okay.
July 6th then, next for
Is the
us.
dress code policy going to be changed through policy? Or that's just in the handbook?
The policy is
Item D.
vague intentionally,
Yeah,
so that it,
it's just part
yeah.
of.
Well, which policy? Because the one is not vague. So like last year when I went through, there was literally 5 different versions of the dress policy.
You mean
All the
how,
handbooks, they
All the
link to
handbooks-
board.
Oh.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
And we
They
were
Yeah.
loose, and now this year we went tight again.
Right.
Yeah, and as far, our board policy should be,
I meant,
Pretty
yeah,
tight.
Neola's
Yeah.
policy.
and that's what I was looking at, Kristen, to make sure that those, that language in the
That's
handbook
not the biggest
aligned
thing that we have to
Yeah.
focus
the
on.
policy language. And I couldn't continue to look at, I mean, there's a lot, you could read,
5511.
you can read them all.
Yep.
You know?
Is it
So,
still
I
free?
think July.
5511.
They
Yeah,
took them
is it pretty,
out of the handbooks and now just have the links to the board.
We just have it.
A
intentional?
reference to the policy number, that's
Yep.
good.
Correct, so
Yeah.
that there is.
So there's
so
not
it
three
just
different
is
three different
correct.
versions.
It links it
Right.
right to the board policy, which
Yep.
is vague.
So it can be disruptive.
But I think it says that, like midriffs have to be covered.
Not the board policy.
No, yeah, you're right, it does not.
Really?
It doesn't go
No,
that detailed.
Okay.
Right.
So then we should probably be looking at changing the board policy then.
So things like obscenity and
District-wide, that's.
Yeah, then we need to update the board
profane
policy.
language.
Which is separate.
But handbooks are actually, if you're going
Thank
to
you,
make
Heather.
something more restrictive, that's the area to do it.
Right, but it should match the
Yeah.
policy.
I agree. Because otherwise, because they just removed the wording and just the hyperlink is in there, so.
Yes,
Yeah.
to lessen the chance of question, you know, like West Elementary's reads like this, middle school reads like this, the high school reads like this. I think taking it out was the good idea, so it all refers to one place, and that needs to be tightened.
Yes.
And I feel like there was a time at some point, really, because I think I got in trouble for this as a staff member, for cold shoulders.
Like cutouts?
Yeah. At one time, I don't know, but I just.
The thing with the dress code policy is if you change it, like it always says 80% of the kids are gonna follow it. It's that 20%, all you have to do is write it down, and those parents, 80% of the parents are gonna make the kids follow the rules. It's what are you gonna do with the other 20%?
Well, if
Okay,
you
you'll scold
hold
them
it-
a couple times, we now are down to 10%,
Yeah.
and then what? Are we more concerned with that, or are we more concerned with
I get what you're
baby
saying
in the back?
entirely, but I also
When I
feel
lived
like
in-
you can't have a rule and not
Right.
do anything with it.
Right, so
Then
then
why have
if
it?
we, right, so then if we make
know?
stricter rules, then how are we gonna enforce them?
And I
Versus
think it
leaving
really-
vague and focusing on
When I lived
current
in the
changes
suburb of
and
New
trying
Orleans-
to tackle one thing at a time versus.
When I was living in the suburb of New
Need a
Orleans, they
motion
were
to
having a
adjourn.
problem with dress code, not like we are. Their problem was gangs were fighting because of a certain pair of shoes, or certain top, so they went to a dress code policy. And it was a struggle the first year that public school went to the dress code policy, but it literally cut more than half of the behavior problems in the school. Because
And if it was affecting our academic achievement or the behavior was caused by the dress code, okay, well, it's a different conversation versus.
But how do we
Well, yes
know
and
that
no.
dress code is not affecting our academic?
Right, I think if they dressed respectfully, that would mean that it gives the, coming to school, puts it on a different level.
Well,
From what I see
I know,
is if
what is
you,
respectful for me may not be respectful
This?
for somebody else, so then that's a
Right.
matter of
Take
interpretation.
those back.
Yeah, I
That's
sent her
why-
the first
Yeah.
one. I didn't get done with this.
Okay,
this one.
thank you.
Have we officially adjourned?
I
Yeah.
said that.
Oh.
So I would hope that by focusing not on the dress code this year, again, burns me to say that out loud. But when we super focus and are diligent in the other areas, then year two, we can add dress code and whatever else. And I feel like our compliance for the dress code, I'm not even worried about students, I'm more concerned about the implementation with staff being willing and comfortable to follow
And
it.
males should not address a female. I would never.
Right,
No.
so
Right.
I would recommend the things like Kristen said, that
That's what